Live, so reminder to turn on your microphone when you're speaking and turn it off when you're not speaking. I hope you all had a good, restful night. I hope you had a good chance to think this over, to sleep on some of the many topics that we talked about yesterday. And I hope that you were able to come up with a draft of your own. If you were a committee of one, what would you put in the field of study? And I hope that you gave some thought to the potential tracks that we've got. We've got till 12 o'clock today. We could go a little bit later than that, but we've only contracted with our people who are managing our broadcasting till 12, so we really want to keep it to then. We've got till 12 today to nail down the courses in the field of study, hopefully to get tracks established if we're going to do that, and what the courses will be with those as well. Some other issues that I want to make sure at least get aired out at some point today. The question of what to do with the students who are going into teaching certification. Do we need a separate track for that? Are there certain standards or requirements or expectations for those going into teaching certification? And I also want to make sure that we talk about or touch on issues of accreditation, what the accreditation standards are for what's happening. Natalie, you mentioned your institution just is going through or just went through accreditation. You might be up to date on what it is that accreditation standards are looking for, and we want to make sure our field of study is not going to cause any conflicts or headaches with the accreditors. So with that, I'll turn it over to Natalie to get us started. Thanks.
Did everybody do their homework? I was thinking that we could start with having this document and maybe have somebody edit it while we talk so we can get a few things solidified and we can all visually see the things that we've agreed upon. Alan, do you mind typing into it? And please help me with all of the Roberts meeting. I think you have the, isn't it Roberts? Roberts rules. Rules, yeah. I thought we could just start with putting in Arts 1303, Art History 1. I think we all agreed upon that being a part of the draft. That could be the first course title. And then Arts History 2. (1304). And I think we agreed on Design 1, Arts 1311. And then we agreed on Design 2, Arts 1312. And then, did we agree on Drawing 1? Drawing 1, yes? Okay. That's 1311, right? Or no, 1316. And then from there, we discussed possibly having a choose section. So I think in that choose section, we could start with Drawing 2. Choose one out of these, or we'll see how many we do, but just choose.
Choose X.
Yeah, yeah. Drawing 2, and then do you all want to add to that, or please add to it whatever other courses you think can.
Would it also, before we get into that real quick, for the record, I just realized that the Art History 1 and 2, Survey 1 and 2, my institution probably contested because of one thing. We have 3 foundation classes of art history. One of them is a non-Western art history. It's required for taking all the non-Western art, African art, Asian art, Islamic art. So any transfer coming in will not be able to take any of the upper division non-Western art classes. So from that point of view, currently our degree plan allows for choose 2 of the 3 art history foundation classes. Unfortunately, non-Western art history foundation is not part of the ACGH though.
ACGM.
ACGO.
M.
Sorry. I only got 4 hours of sleep, sorry.
And likewise, we converted our art appreciation to a Survey 3, which is modern and world. And that's a prerequisite for all of our upper division art history classes as well. So not having a third art history here is also a problem for us.
Yeah. And we did have a third in the ACGM, and they just recently dropped it. So I could see that potentially being a course that is certainly a need and isn't fulfilled with any of the other course descriptions. It was there, and we taught it, and I think it was just a matter of making sure all of the junior or community colleges taught it, so the numbers were there to continue to teach it, because I do think it's an important class. So that may be a potential course addition, and that after seeing that UNT and maybe other schools are offering 3 foundation art history classes, that might validate the addition. It's a matter of having 5 upper-level institutions accepting it, so. I don't know how we can move forward with that. With the art, could we keep with the studio and then we can go back to the art history?
Yeah, at this point, we can, because there is that public opinion part, I'm fine with proceeding with the just art history 2. And then if we have time to visit it, so that.
Okay.
A question for clarification. So yesterday the debate was about whether these should be in the core, whether these should be in the field of study or whether they should be left in the core. As of today, you're moving art history 1 and 2 into the field of study. This is what we're looking at here. And now the debate is whether we need a third within the field of study? Okay, thanks.
I have a question about drawing 2. Mm-hmm. Yesterday we talked about the need for a 4D design class, and Alan said it was easier to, if I'm correct, easier to make changes to an existing course than to start the process to create an entirely new course. Can drawing 2 be converted to a 4D design class?
Oh.
By changing the SOLs and its title, and therefore we don't have to start over if no one's requiring drawing 2 as a part of their degree plans? Is that a possibility?
We currently require drawing 2.
Well, we do this year, but next year we won't. Okay.
I have a separate question. Alan sent the worksheet that has all the CIP codes that says, should the fine arts FOS cover these programs? I looked up my institution. Specifically, we have 3 of them, which is Art Studies Journal, which is at 50.0701.00. That's our BA. And then the 702 one, that's the Fine Studio Arts, that's our BFA. And then our 703 is our art history. I was hoping to, I think it might be best, since we have the majority of us here probably are looking at either a BFA or BA mostly right now in regards to the FOS. So, but I thought maybe we should focus more on the BFA first on the CIP code, and then from there deliberate whether or not that same FOS will apply to the other CIP codes.
Mm-hmm. Can I get a motion or a second?
That's the motion.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor? Majority agrees. Okay, so this will, FOS will relate to studio tracks for BFA. Okay.
I have a question then. Does that, does that mean that we are ruling out the solution that we were shown that theater and drama had done, where the FOS was really pertinent only to the BA and not the BFA?
We're not ruling that out. I think we're just trying to focus the start of this
Okay.
to make one and then see how much that one can translate to the others.
Okay, but in making one, you're making one.
Yes.
As a follow-up, our collection, at least from our institution, our BFA in theater is very, very small. Whereas it's my sense that for studio, most of the students are BFA tracked. Is this correct? So I think if we're going to do an FOS, it should apply to the majority. So I don't think that's a similar situation in that case, if that makes sense.
Back to maybe Eric's question of changing drawing twos. Do we want to make a motion to try to do that? How does everybody feel? Do we want more discussion?
Is the bureaucratic change of adding a class substantially different from changing the nature of a class on this list? Is the bureaucratic work required to add a class really substantially different than to change a class? So the question is, could we take drawing 2 and make that 4D? But is that bureaucratic requirement really much different than creating a new class?
Well, don't worry so much about the bureaucratic part. We'll take care of that. I mean, we'll do what we need to do. But it's easier to change the description of an existing class than it is to get institutions to adapt to an entirely new class that they've never had staffed before, that they don't have a syllabus for, that they don't have any preparation for.
And that would include changing the title.
It's possible. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure.
I wonder if it might be easier or less dramatic for us to change, if we wanted to do that, to change Arts 2348 digital art to that class rather than...
Our institution currently includes 4D in that course number as mentioned.
Another option might be if we have the design 3, which is 2311, instead of we could just add N4D. It could be 2D, 3D, and 4D, and then it could still be offered as an advanced class, but it could also be offered as a 4D.
But that wouldn't work if a four-year institution is expecting 4D as part of the core, and a community college chooses to teach 2311 as they are able to as an advanced ceramics class or advanced metals class because it's a variable topic. They use it as a variable topic,
because it
so
would
there's
just
no
be
way
like
to...
that course number 4D rather than like ceramics or metals or whatever. So that might be a way that it would be a little more seamless than trying to change drawing 2.
What about if we did it with Design 2? Is there a way to bring it in? Because Design 2 is the three-dimensional element anyway. Could we bring it together?
I think there was discussion yesterday of them being 3 classes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
That was part of it, is the awareness that many of the four-year colleges have attempted to meet contemporary times by creating it from, I'm a 2-year, so I'm observing, by creating 3 foundation courses to look at 2D, 3D, and then virtual D. So maybe I should turn this discussion over to y'all, but when I commented on it, it was trying to find a way that we could match more transferability and also incorporate the fact that there is a new area that wasn't in existence when Design 1, Design 2 were written out.
We would still advocate for a 4D class as a separate class instead of trying to figure out how to pile that information on top of the 2D and 3D classes, which are already have plenty of content on their own.
Yeah.
We have, on the digital art, we essentially have that. It's actually required for all of our BFA, BA, and BFA in education. But we also have slight sectional focus, so that digital arts for designers, digital arts for studio. And so in all this, in all of them, they introduce time-based media. For some of the other ones, like gaming and animation, it includes a little bit more intro to augmented reality or those kinds of things. So it's a little, because the description is purposely made generic, it's been helpful for us.
Can you clarify that you're talking about 2348 or?
I believe I am.
2313.
Yes, 23.
It would be a shame, I think, to
Digital
take,
art,
to take us the one digital studio level course and put it down into the core, because then students wouldn't be able to take the core information. Now, I shouldn't say core, into the foundation level. Then students wouldn't be able to take the information from the foundation and apply it in a studio class. So I would hope we wouldn't have to use 2348.
So you're suggesting that if we move the digital, what is it, 2348?
2348.
2348 into a freshman art foundation, there is no place in this lineup for essentially a digital 2. Like, so you've got ceramics 1 and 2, and you've got painting 1 and 2, but you're using that class 2348 essentially as the 2 level?
Yeah, if it was repackaged to be at the foundation level, which is broad exploration of an area or topic media, then, I mean, at the 4-year level, I guess they could grow into the digital 2, but they would only have 1, whereas all the other studios have. There is a defined studio for each area to continue that exploration from the foundations. So I think that would be a shame to take that away.
The only remaining digital class, so-called digital, in the ACGM would be Design Communications 1, and that's it. There is no other option into digital media. So those are the only 2 digital media classes that we're allowed to teach at a 2-year institution.
And I think that it seems to me that it is, I understand where you're coming from, Rebecca, but I do think we are trying to recommend that as a foundations class in our program because of the need. So we're sort of treating it as a foundations already, not technically in terms of on paper, but advising our students that they need to have digital before they leave. So it already is sort of being treated like that in our case, and I think it's it's already there. It's an easy transition.
You're now taking an what would be considered a course that should be taught after that, and you're bringing it to a foundation level.
Yep.
I guess I'm confused why we aren't focusing on the Design 3, which seems to be very malleable.
That's the same idea. It's a 2,000 level class as well.
But it's not as defined studio class. Is there argument against 2311 being molded towards a time-based digital virtual exploration as a foundation?
Yes.
There is?
Yeah.
And but you're utilizing it to allow your college to teach printmaking, advanced printmaking. So, but I'm not sure that's actually what the course was designed for. It sounds like you found a wonderful loophole, which I would like to use at SAC too. But those courses would not transfer as a printmaking to another college. It would just transfer as an open elective. So it's, I mean, I would think the better choice would be to bring back printmaking too.
Yes, but that's not happening.
Right.
That won't happen. I mean, that's what we fought against. But I think it's an open course because it's about design theory and concepts. So to apply that to whichever class you're in. And I do think you could do 4D into it, but I agree with Eric that it's not going to be specific enough. And then I also wonder who's able to teach 4D. Well, I guess for me it seems more logical in a digital plate.
I want some clarification on 4D, because when we started calling it 4D, all of a sudden we started talking about maker spaces and the machines 3D printers and stuff. And I think that dialogue completely changed to physical 3-dimensional things that were called 4D. But that's not my dialogue. The initial dialogue was about looking at virtual, time-based, digital.
I believe I'm the one who called it 4D, and it's really shorthand for computer-based
Right, so that was
digital
your-
timeline, things that you create in a fab lab, I mean, for all of that. So I don't care if we don't call it 4D. That was just it's a really easy way to talk about 2D, 3D, and 4D, and just so we can call it whatever we want to. But I think that it's still a separate course.
Okay.
Yeah.
One question I would like to ask, not to get off this topic, but to prepare for it, is if we did bring in this third course, the key to really bringing in this third course is to make something that's transferable between 2- and 4-year colleges. But I know from being in TASA and listening to like WASH at Houston, I think, I really love the programs, but they're very specialized. And if we did create this 3-tiered foundation approach at the 2-year college to try to meet the 4 years, do you all think that you would accept it?
My understanding is once the FOS is in place, Alan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, then we have no option but to accept it.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so.
And you're good with that, though? I mean, like,
It
is that...
mirrors what a number of us are already doing anyway. So, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak for all the 4-year institutions, but that is, I mean, we are moving in exactly the same way that they are at UT and at Arlington. I mean, we're looking at these programs in much the same way Texas State's doing in our foundations. So they're sort of broader topic areas and less specifically 2D, 3D, 4D, but we cover all of those things in all of our classes, plus design thinking and worldview and curiosity and all of that. So yeah, I mean, that would be fine for us.
Maybe we could take a quick survey of how many of the 2-year colleges are already teaching digital art.
I think part of the, if I could jump in there, and I think our evolution around those topics at Texas State has, from what I'm hearing, been mirrored in the larger sort of statewide activity, and that is that, I mean, I remember many years ago getting hired and being like, wow, nobody wants to do anything digital. Okay, I'm not the person to do this, but I'll do it, because there's nobody else doing it. So you offer this class like digital art. I think we actually called it digital printmaking, which now is like, oh, that's so embarrassing. Anyway, we taught it that way for many years, and it starts out as an elective, and then it becomes a requirement for all majors, and then it starts changing, and then you actually are able to hire people specific to do that, and then the nomenclature changes, and I think 4D is actually very useful for a name in that sense, because it does encapsulate a lot. And there are going to be differences, and this is where the learning outcomes, I think, play a really important role. Because not everybody's going to have the same computer lab. Not everybody's going to have the same skill set. Somebody's going to be really good at editing video software and somebody else isn't. And so there's going to be differences. But I think we really do have to look at what are the core aspects of any one topic that we want to accept, you know, transferring from one to the next.
Well, for us, the 2348 digital art is a perfect fit. We have a course called, in addition to our WASH program, we have a course called Foundations in Digital Art. It's a 2,000 level class. This would transfer perfectly for us, so this is the easiest one for me. And I think the description of 2348, that the potential of the computer, software and hardware for visual, conceptual, and practical uses in the visual arts is pretty broad. I think that gives us a lot of latitude. They talk about conceptual uses, so you're not just, it's not just software training necessarily. It shouldn't be, but because it's digital art, it's not digital software. So for me, I don't have any problems with that course. I think it's good.
It looks like there are 6 institutions that have this course here, Digital Arts Foundations, or some variation of it. Can those of you who are here from, let's see, we've got Arlington, Texas State, Sam Houston, San Antonio, Texas Tech, all offer something like this. What course? Is it a course that you just have on your campus that you invented yourself? Or, I mean, are you giving equivalency to something that's already in the ACGM for this Digital Arts Foundation course?
Yes, that's what, we look at we look at a portfolio and decide whether or not they've.
But is there something that, from the ACGM that people have been bringing in that you're giving transfer credit equivalency for digital arts foundations?
Yes, but I couldn't tell you, I mean, I assume it's this 2348, but they bring in a lot of, I see a lot of different things, so that's why we look at them.
Okay.
We do at UTA. We give transfer credit for that.
We do as well, yeah.
But it's 2348. The puzzle is, it's not widely offered. Only 5 institutes, down here, where are we? Here, 35 colleges offer it, which is okay, that's sort of medium. But only 5 universities offer it, which is odd because when you look at this, you know, of the institutions that have studio art programs that are producing large numbers of majors, 6 of them offer it, which doesn't even jive with what we have down here, about 5 institutions. So they're probably calling it different course names or giving it a different course number that's not reflected here. But perhaps this course is more, I don't know, it's a puzzling contradiction there.
I know that at our institution, we're leaning more towards 2313 and the graphic arts than the digital. So we were using the digital, but now really we've even pulled that out of our degree plan.
I think that another aspect of this is that in that evolution, I mean, the things that we used to teach as a standalone sort of digital skill set class have really just been pushed into other existing classes. To my sense, that's how it should be. Now, again, the outcomes, so regardless of the class offerings, the outcomes could be the same. But for us, the digital as a foundational element has just been pushed into our foundations program and is spread out. It's not called digital per se. We are calling it 4D. But again, even when we call it 4D, we call it that interspersed in these larger foundations classes. So I think for my mind, that's a reason to put it into 2311 Design 3, because it at least reflects this idea of foundations.
According to the data, there's hardly anybody offering Design 3 right now.
The description in the ACGM for Design 3, parentheses, maybe 2D, 3D color or combinations thereof, elements and principles of art using 2- and 3-dimensional concepts. And I think that actually really mirrors a lot of digital virtual, because we're thinking often in three-dimensional spaces, but viewing it on a 2-dimensional surface. It seems very accommodating.
Yes, but although that list would give me the impression that, oh, that's a catch-all, that you could teach a lot of different things and it would count for. And so I would argue to change that description to more specifically reflect digital/4D.
And I would argue that we leave 2311 alone, because we haven't gotten on the list of what we would do in the sophomore year. For UNT, it still doesn't get to the 36 hours that we currently require of all of our freshmen and sophomores. But my suggestion we would have 6 hours from a menu of level 1 media-based courses, so Photo 1, Ceramics 1, and we would have 6 hours of level 1 and or level 2 media-based classes. So the problem is that 2311 becomes the only course where they're able to teach advanced. Some of these disciplines don't have a level 2 course at all, and the 2311 is the one place that the community colleges can use to actually create a level 2 course. And for a student to gain admittance into our per-division class, they have to have a level 1 and level 2 in the same media subject they want to admittance in their before they get to the junior year. So that didn't get as many of the art classes out of the way as we would like them to have out of the way, but that would be the bare minimum that would meet our requirements. I mean, that's just ours, but But if we change 2311, then we make it impossible for students who are interested in, I'm doing this out on my computer, it makes it impossible for a student who wants to get into metals, because there is no metals 2 in the ACGM. But they can use the 2311 to create a metals 2 if they've got the facilities and the number of students, and then those students would be able to matriculate into our portfolio reviews and become a metals major. So I'd argue strongly that we leave 2311 alone, because it's the only option community colleges have to be able to help meet that need.
I'm wondering why we're not talking about 1313, since it's the next number.
It's not, I don't think it has enough contact hours, because that's, TAS has been looked at that.
1313?
It's a course that combines lecture and studio, and it has a maximum of 64 contact hours. It's Foundations of Art, Introduction to Creative Media through Enhanced Artistic Awareness and Sensitivity of Materials and Tools, includes art history and culture through the exploration of a variety of artwork. It's actually, TAS has been looking at trying to bring that course back up to, you might be able to speak to this better, as a non-majors introduction course that would have a lecture and a studio component, which could be very popular in the non-majors area to draw students into art. But the dialogue was that because it has the lecture component in there and it's only 64 credit hours, that it's not a good studio, pure studio option. Now, and that's just my opening statement. I don't know if that can be modified.
Could that be modified? And it could become like sort of a normal.
Were you discussing 2313?
Yes. 1313, yes.
Pardon me.
And that's what Tessa was talking about, altering, was making that more like a normal class?
Yeah, actually, about 2 years ago, I think I came here with Mark Greenwell from College in the Mainland. He was spearheading that, and he presented it to TASA. I mean, he presented it to Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and was accepted on a per-college basis, not universally, but every college has to apply, to offer it as a non-majors option, which has a lecture with a studio component to give some hands-on experience to general core. You know, I think it could be very useful to help give students access to hands-on and make them realize if
that
they want.
That seems like the appropriate class to use, yeah. If we can change those aspects.
Yes, I understand that happened within the last year, where it went down from 96 to 64.
So
But then last year it did? Oh, okay.
my only concern there would be, would moving that into the core for this, if it's going to turn, if it's turning into a non-major class in several institutions, would that sort of be at cross purposes? That's to say, if it's being created as a non-major class primarily for visual performing arts core purposes, would putting it in this field of study for studio majors create a conflict, because it wouldn't be doing the same thing, right? Am I misunderstanding? And my concern would be that different colleges, different tier colleges especially, would be taking different approaches to the class, but regardless, if a student takes it, then it would count towards the FOS. So, I mean, it seems to me like an either or. I take the point that it could be repurposed that way, but I also really like this idea of, because one of the things that we've been struggling with at UT Austin is, can we have any sort of hands-on anything in our visual performing arts core? And this seems to me to be actually a very smart way to do that. Mm-hmm. And I like that idea a lot. So I don't know. Again, my sense is I'd be reluctant to let go of that option if that's starting to happen, and taking it over for the purposes of this.
Presumably, there are two-year institutions using 1313 as a lecture-based non-major class, or it would not have changed last year. That's what we do at South Plains. Yeah, so how many toes does that step on if we say, gee, we want to pull it back into this and make it a 96-hour program? Is that for the two-year institutions? Are y'all?
The other class that's very underutilized is 1325, drawing and painting. And seeing how that's, I think San Antonio College is one of the few colleges that teaches it.
We're offering 1325 right now.
You do?
Actually, yes.
We offer it too. It's a very, just a okay.
Painting for non-majors. I think with two-year colleges stuck at 60 credits, it's actually hard to get in any level 2 class.
It is.
So they would be taking that outside of their degree plan. Yes, it's great, and eventually they probably do have to take it. So I'm actually leaning towards 2311 as being the course to become the 4-dimensional foundations class, because it's already listed as a design, and that is a foundations class. I know we want leeway to teach what our students are interested in and getting into their media, but if we're trying to get them out with 60 credits, many of our students are never going to have a level 2 painting, a level 2 ceramics. They're only going to take it in addition to the 60, and that's counterintuitive to what the state wants us to do, is graduate on time, graduate with no extra credits, get them onto the 4-year institutions so they can take the upper division. So I would say that any class we pick is going to impact a number of programs, but I'd say that 2311 is the one that we should look at for going for 4-dimensional design.
Do you have like a student learning outcomes for this 4D class, or like a syllabus?
With me? I do not. We're in the process of rewriting our core. We have a basic art class. It's a 3,000 level class because it was developed years and years and years ago. And it is the Introduction to Digital Arts, which would be the equivalent of the 2348, and I could get a syllabus for that. And it has been taught for specific audiences, so there are versions specifically for art education and for studio. We no longer even use it in design because we cover those courses, those requirements in our own design programs. But I could get I could get that if that would be helpful.
It's interesting, we too have tailored versions of that exact class that we treat as foundations, but there's one for studio, one for ComDes, one for art ed, one for other classes. And so I'm kind of surprised in some ways that it sounds like so many 4 institutions are doing the same. Like there's no one version of that class that serves all of their majors. It's tailored. And so for us, that's why that class is currently a 2,000 level class, because it has to be tailored separate from the foundations program. So I'm not sure if that really bears on our decision, but just remarking on that.
I think there's sort of 2 levels of discussion. One is that we're talking about 4D, quote unquote, as a broad introduction to students who may or may not make it into the particular major they choose to make it into, at least at our institution, because of the portfolio reviews. And so they have a basic understanding and then can apply that information in whichever other program they choose to go to after that. And then there are, in communication design, there are very specific requirements for software that would not be appropriate to teach. And we also teach those to our communication design students. So there are multiple layers of computer-based, software-based, hardware-based education that actually have to occur depending on the disciplines that our students matriculate to. So I really think we're talking about sort of a broad introduction to time-based media, Fab Lab, 4D, in that regard. And I still, I would still advocate that 2348 is by description is actually the closest that's available in the ACGM as to the content of the course that we're all discussing. I realize that creates problems for many programs that teach 2348 in a different way, but if we're looking at the ACGM, then that seems like the most natural fit if we're talking about moving one of these into a basic core experience as a 4D-based class.
I have a list of objectives for our digital foundations class. Here it says to develop an understanding of computer arts interface, computer technology, operating systems, and equipment, to develop comprehension of varying applications and graphic software, and become familiar with basic computer hardware used in the arts and media industry to create drawn, painted, and photographic images, to draw upon and develop the ability to apply art, design, research, and computer knowledge into solving visual and conceptual problems, and to use all applied computer technology and knowledge of this course creatively in order to express significant content that goes beyond the average expectation in solving various computer graphics assignments and projects. Emphasis is placed on students using the computer graphics medium as a tool in discovery and interpretation for their own ideas. So it's kind of like it prepares them for digital arts. So we have an arts foundation, digital foundations, and we have a digital arts class.
And what's the course number for that?
The course number is ART 1023.
Wow, it's not even in the ACGM.
I just realized our Foundations in Digital Arts class is 2313, which is the number in the ACGM or of the Design Com 1, so.
And
That's
for us,
ours.
that's graphics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're currently teaching Arts 1313 as a foundation course?
313.
Oh, okay, good.
But we actually are teaching 1313, that's one of our WASH numbers. And WASH is 9, I know this is another rabbit hole, but WASH is a 9-hour foundations course that students take in one semester. And one of those 3-hour pieces of that is a lecture course, so.
And how does that transfer?
We make all transfer students take all 3 of those courses, whether they've had, no matter what they've had, we make them take that course.
Even though that won't continue once this is set.
Right.
Can I jump in? It seems that we're circling around on what course to repurpose for the digital foundations. It may just unfortunately be the most straightforward thing to propose a new course, so that we don't have to decide which of these repurposings is least harmful. That's what I would move.
I would second that.
I would also, we could do one of two, like the clustering thing, choose one of 2 of these courses so that the 2 courses being digital art and the other one design 3, since no one's teaching design 3 almost, according to the data. That way those who want to introduce a time-based or 4D, they can do it with design 3, and those who are already doing it in digital art can continue just doing that.
We wouldn't be able to support that because the transcript is not going to show the subtopic for the 2311. So we'd be accepting a class for a 4D component that could be an advanced printmaking class.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that just in the day-to-day application, that would be problematic in terms of how we evaluate transcripts.
If we change the description of the design 3,
if we change the description of design 3 to foundations, then we don't need to do anything because then it becomes a 4D design foundations class. And we don't need to incorporate 2348 at that point. But then we do away with the possibility for the community colleges to teach, 2 years to teach an advanced level class in the subject that the ACGM doesn't allow. If we tamper with 2311, I agree with Andrew that and it sounded like immediately we had seconds, that a motion go forward that that there is no class that meets the needs of this body and all the way our institutions work on the books, and that we should move forward with the possibility of creating a new 4D art foundations core class.
I agree.
And then we can move on from the conversation. We all have the specific class that we need to have. We all know exactly how it will transfer, and it meets our needs, and it leaves the wiggle room everybody needs in their curriculum across the state to be able to use the classes that currently exist on the books in the ways they need to use those classes.
I have a question that's of great importance to our college, at least. If people are using 2311 now for a variety of upper-level media and it's not defined on the transcript, and this is at the 2-year level, how do you, for your colleges, treat the class when it comes to you if there is no specific media designation? Does it just go as a free elective, or is it rejected outright?
No, in this situation, in this FOS, if the 2311 becomes the level 2 for courses that don't exist, then we would be asking the students to provide a copy of the transcript, not the transcript of the syllabus for the class, and then we would know if it was a printmaking 2 or a metals 2, or, I mean, if that was actually the intent of the class. And that way we'd be able to apply it appropriately.
So does appropriately mean that you would apply it as metals 2 or as an open elective?
We would apply it as metals 2 because at least our current requirements require a level 1 and level 2 at the sophomore year in whichever major the student chooses. And so we would apply it as their second course.
Right.
You know, I mean, it may be a course. Is that
common with the other 4-year colleges? My impression is that many times these get sidelined as just a free elective.
Well, at UTSA, we don't accept any second-level classes unless they fit into one of their electives.
Yeah, and Texas State is similar to that.
They fit into one of the electives? What do you mean?
Advanced studio electives, and it's a menu of classes that they choose from. Mm-hmm.
But if the FOS says, I mean, if we get to that point where there is a level 2 in the FOS, then you won't have any choice but to accept them. I mean, so that's just the negotiation.
Oh, we can accept it and still do the same thing we're doing now and put it in the electives. I mean, it's okay.
But that's not real acceptance. That's the problem is with the transfer, the way it was viewed on the 2-year and the 4-year side, or for the student themselves.
Well, it's not so much a problem because their level 2 courses exist at the 3,000 level. So they're not asking anybody to go back and redo something they would have done at their sophomore year. It would transfer in as a free elective, and then they would continue in their programs exactly as their programs are written, and they would take a level 2 class when they get there. And as long as there's a place in the curriculum that would use the level 2
It's
course.
true, but what if they're free electives? What if they don't have any left? Because we have very few free electives. So then they're back to that original equation where they've paid for the class twice. Once at the community college level and once at the 4-year.
I'm no expert and I cannot answer that. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a limit to, I mean, we apply those credits where we can, but there's a limit. If students bring in too many, then they go into like the land of extra courses because there's a limit to how many art courses in our degree plan we can fit in. I mean,
I know as chair, part of my job is to keep the discussion on track, but I have to slightly deviate here and say that historically, that's a huge problem. Transfer students have more credits than we can apply, and it gets them into trouble where they don't have anything to take that gets into full time. And then they also, that's how they end up with 7-year degrees and 7.5-year degrees. Likewise, I mean, I just need to say officially at some point that my experience and the experience of my colleagues is that any transfer student is suffering under the illusion of being on track. They arrive and they think they're on track, and then it takes them a while to realize that they're not on track and they're behind, and then you can initiate the time of catch-up. So transferring, period, slows students down. That is my experience, that's my view, and I understand this is a reality, you know, facing the state, that we're going to have a lot of transfers, and I'm willing to work and deal with it as best we can. And I realize that we're all fighting for our institutions. But to me, that's an essential reality.
But isn't the FOS specifically, I mean, isn't that what we're having to address? Is that, I mean, essentially, by law, we're creating a transfer guide that us in our four-year institutions will not have any choice but to adapt to, which
That's
means
right.
if that's what passes in the FOS, then you won't be in a position to say we won't accept the
absolutely right.
second year, and then that has addressed the transfer students' possibility. Can I ask a question, Alan? Our experience in UNT is that almost no students ever transfer to us with a completed associate's degree. It's incredibly rare that students come to us when they finish their degree. They take classes at Brookhaven and well, we have like 1,900 two-year institutions in our area, but they come all over the place. Has the FOS actually increased the number of students who are completing their associate's degrees? So it would be FOS or core complete coming out of the two-year institutions and the places and the programs where it now exists? Has that changed the playing field, so the number of students who are actually going to come to us? Because if a student comes to us not FOS complete, then none of these rules apply anyway. I mean, and I realize that doesn't help the student, but that's sort of the reality. They have to be FOS complete, or our requirement to accept all these classes as a block are
Wait,
gone.
what?
Well, no, but wait, my understanding is that we need to accept each of these classes individually or as a block. So if somebody comes to us, and correct me if I'm wrong, not FOS complete, but has completed part of the FOS, those FOS courses need to be accepted, mapped onto the FOS courses that we considered to be such.
That's not what I understood Alan said yesterday.
Can you clarify, Alan, please?
Not as a package, but it's per.
Well, it's a little early to tell with the data yet about how many, whether or not it's increased. As you can see on this chart, sorry, it's hard to see, just by institution, you can see the numbers of the amount of increase here of students who are field of study complete. This is how much it's growing from 2014 to 2018. I don't know what's going on in Alamo, Northwest Vista, but they are going gangbusters there.
Yes.
But you can see by here the colleges here and the rates of increase. So there are some where there hasn't been any increase, but for most there's been a modest increase, and at these institutions there's been a significant increase over the last 4 years of those who are FOS complete or associate degree complete.
So to the other point, I believe that I understood you yesterday say that if a student graduates FOS complete, then we would be bound to accept those classes. Is this as a package, or is this as a course-by-course requirement that we accept the courses in the FOS even if they don't complete the degree?
If they're FOS incomplete, then you accept the courses one by one, but the courses they did complete still have to apply to the degree.
Okay.
If they're FOS complete, then it's a package. Their package replaces your lower division package.
If they're not FOS complete, can we require additional lower level classes that are not in the FOS?
Right.
Okay, maybe that's what I understood. Thank you.
Can you be FOS complete but not graduate with your associate's degree?
Yes. However, if you have FOS complete and 60 hours, you can graduate with it. You can still walk through graduation with an associate degree, even if you haven't completed the core. Yeah, as long as you have 60 hours, you can get an associate degree either by having a complete core or a complete field of study or complete both.
So that's very similar if they're FOS complete to a bridge agreement, isn't it, basically?
Too much of what?
A bridge agreement, like the school will accept everything from the junior college automatically into their program. It's like a bridge, right?
Mm-hmm. It's like one big, fat, statewide articulation agreement for the field of study. Okay, we better nail this down.
So, right, can we call my motion, please, to create a new 1,000 level foundation course that would focus on 4D? Let's call it 4D. Just
A second.
right. So,
All in agreement?
Can I also,
Wait, for discussion on that.
can I also ask what would the number of that class be?
I mean, do we need to determine that now? We could make up a number.
No, the number and the course description and the learning objectives are determined separately by the Learning Outcomes Committee.
Oh, yes. So we ask the committee to start working on that, basically.
Yeah, and that Learning Outcomes Committee and the coordinating board and administration and the public, when this goes out for public comment, I can tell you what they're going to ask, which is going to be, how is this course any different from the course that's already there, which is digital art? So,
Well,
I mean, I think we need to articulate very clearly why a new course needs to be created for the content that is already potentially covered in the ACGM description, which is,
2348,
what's the number, Arts?
348.
Because remember, the ACGM description is the minimum, it's not the maximum. I mean, course instructors can do more than what is in the ACGM description. Where are we?
Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Is the problem of digital art the fact that it's a 2,000 number versus 1,000 for institutions? No. No, okay.
It's studio art courses that explore the potential of the computer hardware and software medium for their visual, conceptual, and practical uses in the visual arts, and there are no learning objectives.
So the problem is that some institutions are using this course to meet other sorts of requirements.
Correct.
So, I mean, I suppose an alternative would be that we would all agree that all institutions in Texas will now use it for this new purpose. My sense was around this room that would create headaches for the way it's currently being used. And again, not being from one of those institutions, I'll defer. But it seems to me the simpler solution is to leave the option for it to continue to be used in a more flexible way, but then to put a 1,000 level course, which would be more visually elegant, what do I know, to have 3 courses in sequence that are essentially 1, 2, 3 at a foundational, as opposed to having one other course somewhere else in the numbering system. Does that make sense? I mean, I know that's sort of a descriptive thing, but in the end, up to now, that course has not been part of a core sequence. And I think what we're talking about right now is a continuation of a core sequence. But I wouldn't have a problem with a friendly amendment to say, no, instead, let's change the description globally of the course that's extant. It just seemed to me that not everybody was happy with that.
So is the priority here the sequencing of the courses? Well, then what are the earlier courses? I mean, you've got Design 1, Design 2, and they're both going to include computer elements, right? And you want this
Not always, no.
I mean, we do, and in a sense, we're doing Design 1, 2, 3. What I'm thinking of this is a third course that in a sense is tantamount to Design 3, but 4D. Am I correct, or am I
That's my understanding.
I mean, it would be simple. I recognize how ridiculous that is. It would be easy enough to say, arts, 4D, whatever, at a 1,000 level is a studio art course that explores the potential of time-based media, Fab Lab. I mean, you could do that without being specific about computer hardware and software. So it's not about software classes, it's not about hardware, but it's about the conceptual notion around developing in an electronic age, developing art in an electronic age. And that would in fact be a very different kind of class than a software class, which is what 2348
But what
says it
about-
is. So
Isn't 2313 more that way,
I don't know what 2313.
the graphic?
It
Does
could
it
be,
not?
yeah.
The problem is
I mean, there's no
start
restriction.
changing 23, we haven't gotten to a graphic design FOS, but I imagine that there's going to be a number of people in this room that the 2313 actually will be an integral part of that FOS. And so to change that would change another FOS that we're looking ahead at, which is a large percentage of our student populations.
Or digital options or
There's nothing in drawing that restricts it to exclude digital. I mean, digital could be incorporated along the way in most any course, couldn't it?
My understanding is we're trying to get 3 semesters of work in this. I mean, could you do everything in 2 semesters? Maybe. I think we're back to the idea. It's my sense people are fine with 1, 2 as they stand, but then that we would like to say is a 3rd semester of foundational work that in somewhere in those 3 semesters you are going into a variety of these elements. Right? I mean, I'm sorry, I keep thinking back to our model, and maybe that's the wrong way to think of it. But again, since part of the point is so many of our 4-year institutions are moving towards a 3-year model, which incorporates multiple elements, that having 3 semesters, I'm sorry, 3 years, 3 semesters in the FOS seems to be logical for transferability. Does that make sense?
Yes, we are conceiving of a 3rd foundations class. Texas State has 4 foundations classes, 2 that are for the entire school, and then 2 that are specific to majors. So that would still leave us shy that we would probably require the student to take that 4th class. But to me, it makes a lot of sense that really what we're talking about is 4D as a 3rd foundations class. And that the better, from my perspective, the better the number and the name reflect that, the better.
So what are the first 2, Design 1 and Design 2?
1311, 1312, and so to me, I mean, I know 1313 is currently being used to teach other things, but that would make a lot of sense if it was ARTS 1313 was essentially this 3rd, you know, we would have to change the name of Design 3, but if we're going to call it Design 1, Design 2, Design 3, and say these are foundations that we're going to transfer across the state, there's some intuitive logic to that that is compelling.
Are you talking about 1313 or 2311?
Well, I'm really talking about changing both, because I want the number 1313 and the name Design 3.
Okay, I was getting lost in
But 2311 could become Design 4.
I mean, the more we can make this intuitively clear, I think the better.
So I'm sorry to be all Robertsy on this. We have a motion that's been seconded to vote to add a course that would be essentially a 3rd foundational course. Number TBD later, description to be finalized later. Do we want to tweak that? I mean, I absolutely like your idea of it being 1313, even though that would create problems, but we can punt that to the folks who are
Well, I mean, if you think about the sequencing, if there are already 2 courses that are 1,000 level, if a student takes that in takes Design 1 in the fall semester of their freshman year, then they take 1312, the second one, in their spring semester. If you have Design 3 numbered 1311, wouldn't they be taking this 3rd course in the fall semester of their sophomore year?
No.
No, they could be taken concurrently if they're designed a particular way. They don't need to be sequential.
If they could be taken concurrently, then doesn't that undermine the whole notion, the priority you're putting on the strict sequencing of first you take 1, then you take 2, then
Okay,
you
no,
take
I'm sorry. I'm seeing less, and sequencing to me is more of a numbering sequencing. The students see, point taken. I'm trying to think as a music person, how can you make a chord out of it, right? I mean, you can't really say these courses must be taken together, but I think courses can be taken together if they're not thought of as sequentially, and I'm sure that you all wouldn't necessarily think of them sequentially, right? I mean, these courses could be done organized in a different way if the outcomes are the outcomes. They don't need to be taken in a particular order because each has a discrete set of outcomes that are planned a certain way, maybe.
At UNT, in fact, at all of our institutions, currently we take Design 1 and Drawing 1 in the fall, Design 2 and Drawing 2 in the spring. And I imagine that we would probably take, 2D and this 4D. We take like 2D and 4D in the fall and drawing 1 and 3D in the spring. These are always overlapped and taught concurrently. So it's not, the sequence, I think, is a matter of logic for the students more than it is a matter of the order in which we take these courses.
Right. I wouldn't worry about the course numbering so much because students don't care what the number is. They just care what the title is. If they see Design 1, Design 2, and Design 3, they'll most likely try to take them in that order. The same way that you would take Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Algebra 3 in that order if that's what the course titles are.
Right, which is not illogical because the first Design 1 deals with two-dimensional formulation of composition. It does not specify digital, so that's random. Design 2 is physical manipulation of three-dimensional forms, I think, for most people. And then this Design 3 is sort of taking both into a virtual space. And that makes, I mean, it's not a bad progression if that's what the student sees.
Question, Alan. How can this committee be assured that Design 3's description would be changed to specifically incorporate 4D?
Thank you, yeah.
Well, if you propose
that's what we're arguing over is that specific, we want that specifically in the title somehow. Right. And to remove just 2D and 3D and not have the 4D in there. That's what we want. So how do we...
If the committee recommends it, it'll happen. I mean, there's a check on this that the Learning Objectives Committee writes that description, but I've never seen them overturn the wishes of the committee, especially after it's gone through public comment period and there are adjustments made or no objections to it from public comments, then it'll happen.
So how would we move forward then with that being part of this?
You would just make a motion with recommended wording or recommended content, and that would be passed along to the Learning Objectives Committee.
Okay.
So as a quick modification, could we call the course digital design and then expand on, so if we actually do Design 1, Design 2, digital design, then it's not as obviously sequential, and then colleges can have the option of figuring out in what order to do this. Maybe. Is that a reasonable, friendly amendment to myself?
Oh, yes.
I'm just going to play a little devil's advocate here. I'm wondering if this is just such a new field in terms of, I mean, UNT's just starting, not even there yet, but going to be changing. It sounds like a lot of you are in the process of changing this core or this foundations section. Personally, knowing what I teach in my 2D design or 3D design class or Design 2 class, I'm already incorporating computer and 3D and laser cutting and all that stuff. So is it something that we need to kind of see a little bit more how this plays out? I'm just trying to think, who's going to teach this class? Who's going to fund the equipment and the media and the programming and the software? I know for myself, I've had to teach myself all these programs. Is it going to fit, are we going to be able to make it as just a standalone class? Because like a lot of, I'm imagining community colleges, we have to stack our classes. And I can't imagine, I'm already sort of incorporating that into my Design 2, and I'm going to stack Design 3 in there. How is that going to work? And so it seems to me like maybe we are putting the cart in front of the horse a little bit and trying to retrofit our classes into this new program. And I don't know, I'm wondering if it should be something that's pushed down the line.
Well, with the FOS, that doesn't mean every 2-year has to offer all of these classes. This is just a list of classes that mandate that they will transfer. And second of all, we're talking about really outcomes. We're talking about learning outcomes that regardless of exactly what classes they're taught in, and I am already thinking like, so if a transfer student comes in, how do we determine what they got and what they didn't, and then like, okay, take this 4th foundations class, right? Because you were a little weaker in the digital, so we'll put you in this section. Anyway, but be that as it may. And so, I mean, I'm all for leaving it out too, and not having it in the FOS at all, but it does seem like it's high time that digital skills are part of a unified statewide foundations. Yeah.
I agree, and that's why I think it would be easier to just have, I mean, Alan is making a good point that digital art seems to already have that, and I don't see that it's taking away from that class. I see that it's just going to increase enrollment. If we say it's more of a foundations class, like you have to have digital art to move on.
Well,
I imagine that skyrocketing your enrollment and filling those classes, and so simply, and again, I agree, I don't think numbers are really, they don't care, they don't understand. We just tell them, you have to take design 1, you have to take design 2, you have to take digital art, you have to take drawing 1, drawing 2, and whatever else, and move on. I don't know, I'm confused as to why digital, it would be bad.
Yeah, Natalie's point's well taken, that if you make design 3 a digital art class, that's going to be the end of Arts 2348. I mean, there won't be enough enrollment to sustain both of those classes. Already, the enrollments for those classes are sort of dicey anyway. Yeah. There's, you know, in community colleges, there are 1,542 students taking Design 3. There are 1,586 taking Digital Art 1. They will, if one of those courses is in the ACG, is in the FOS, then they'll all take the one that's in the FOS, and the other one will wither away. I'm not sure faculty are going to be clear on exactly what the difference is between those two courses. So whichever one their digital art teacher is doing will be the one, you know. I mean, they'll all start teaching Design 3, and digital art will wither off the ACGM from lack of enrollment. So I think there either needs to be a sharp distinction that faculty at colleges will understand and that students will intuit of what the difference is between these two courses, or are they two courses that are teaching essentially the same thing, and because we are emphasizing design over software, we're making the digital art class now the design class. But I don't know. I think we're going to need to offer some real clarity and direction and leadership on this, and we're going to need to do it quickly if we're going to do it.
Yeah, I think at UTSA we'll have no problem. If we make that the digital arts, it's like we'll consider it the digital arts foundation class, that they took that, and then they'll take digital art when they come in. I don't see a problem with it.
I mean, it seems to me that the variety of what the current digital art class is fairly great, and I'm not clear that it corresponds to what we're in this room talking about, the desirable core outcomes. I could be wrong. I mean, my sense is that the way the class is right now, it doesn't meet the goals that we're talking about here. And if that's true, then what opportunity would we have to shape that?
So I have a question, Alan. Is it possible to take the digital arts class 2348, which currently has no student learning outcomes, and recommend that a body convene to develop student learning outcomes that then do address what we're talking about in terms of foundations for design?
I think, well, personally, I think that's the far easier option, because the course is already
That's what it sounds like. That's why I'm asking.
The title already relates to the content that you're talking about, and there are no learning outcomes, which means you've got a blank slate there to draw on of what you want those learning outcomes to be. We're going to need to call a learning objectives committee anyway. It's long overdue for this, and that would be the time to do it. That's personally seems to make sense to me, but I understand that that doesn't solve the issue of sequencing 3 design courses that work together as a family.
I think that's really much less, that's really not the primary consideration. That's just
it would be great graduate with those learning outcomes in their head. How they got them and how you grouped them and what order they took them in is ultimately less important.
So in order for us to move forward, I will withdraw my original motion. I will move that we add 2348, I've lost track, is that the one, to the FOS, with the understanding that a committee be put together for learning outcomes, and that there be a way for then those outcomes to be implemented across current usage, because I think part of the trick is that right now that course is being used in a lot of ways. And it'll be tricky to figure out how to retrofit the outcomes to the way the course is being deployed. That will take some time. But I see how that's more simple. So I'll withdraw my motion to create a new class and say 2348 in the FOS as a requirement.
Do we have a second? Okay, any discussion? Yeah, you have to call for it. And all in favor, say aye. Or all in favor, raise your hand.
Wait, hang on, point of order, that's
Oh, no.
just so it's clear, that motion was only for withdrawing and adding. We should have a new motion to add it specifically.
Well, we
Okay.
never voted on the original motion, so.
I withdrew before we voted on the original one.
So, but we voted to withdraw it.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I guess we shouldn't need to vote. No, we didn't need to vote.
Did we vote to also add it?
I withdrew my motion, and then I moved to add the class.
Rebecca,
so-
can you read the
I
motion? Rebecca, can you read the motion as Andrew made it?
The original motion by UT Austin was to create a new course for 4D Foundation, and that motion was withdrawn before we voted on it.
Okay, but then the last one y'all just voted on, what was that
So
motion?
I think this is a little vague. It was to add 2348 in the field of study.
Right, so I think
as
there should be a clear
requirement.
motion stating that specifically.
Yes, okay.
As a requirement, but do we want to,
Present us.
as a 4D requirement, is that, we want to
You have the
specify?
microphone. Make a motion.
Let's clarify it, though.
Marker.
You want to clarify it?
Go for it.
I make a motion for 2348 digital art to be added to the FOS with, would you say?
Clarification.
4D Foundation class?
With the understanding that additional student learning outcomes with preference towards 4D would be added or at least conferred later.
Second motion? Or second?
The additional student learning outcomes for 4D?
With preference.
By a separate committee.
I like to have. Okay, so what I have it now is that Arts 2348, which is currently represented as digital art, would be placed in the field of study with an understanding that additional SLOs for 4D would be added or discussed later.
By a separate committee.
By a separate.
By a separate committee.
That's good, yeah, thank you.
Although we do have the ability to create them.
We don't have the ability to create.
We can recommend.
Well, for that, let me introduce my colleague, Rebecca Leslie, who organizes and runs the Learning Objectives Committees. And she's in a much better position to tell you exactly how this does and doesn't work about committee recommendations here.
Okay, and we've kind of learned with field of study as we're going along, Alan and I, how to kind of trade off some of these duties, and it's the learning outcome committees, or actually work groups, are made up of faculty, just like you, faculty from art departments or the discipline departments. And we represent community colleges and universities as well. And in the case of where we're doing it on the behalf of something that the field of study has done, we encourage there to be overlap in membership. The difference with this committee is that we do a lot of homework before we meet, so that you are familiar with what is being taught across the state. Right now, you're bringing anecdotal information, which is good and to be considered, but we also want to bring what the Learning Outcomes Group does is we collect syllabus and we look at institutions across the state. And if then the faculty group, after they've done this homework before we even meet and have this catalog of syllabi with learning outcomes already in place, and we are looking at what institutions across the state are doing, then we come together and build it after they have the background of not just what their institution is doing, but what other institutions are doing too. And we look at enrollments, we look at the type of programs, we look at all that information in detail. And then we do that. And if a learning objective committee goes forward, we'll take your recommendations. Like if you want to have a special emphasis in that digital course, tell us that, and we'll see where that, and try to get that according to the direction of this committee. But it'd be based on not only your direction, but also what's in those syllabi at the institutions. So I'm kind of catching up with your discussion, and I understand it is better if we can revamp a course than to create a new one that's going to have overlapping content.
So if
this one has no learning outcomes, and the learning outcomes group, they revise the description, and you can give us direction on that. And usually I think of the description as the topics that need to be covered, and then the learning outcomes, what will the students take from that class? And that will vary in the number. The sciences may have 10 to 13, 14, 15 learning outcomes. Liberal arts, maybe 5, 6. So the level of specificity depends on the discipline. And we'll be looking at, like I said, we'll be looking at the syllabi in the discipline to make those determinations. So from my point of view, in my experience, it's better to redo a course and make it what you want it to be, to ensure that the students at the community college have the preparation that the universities want, than to create a whole new course. This course, 1348, and I may be late in the discussion, 36 reporting entities that are at the community college level, about maybe 33. That's about half, and we're talking about an enrollment of 15 students, 1,500 students. When you compare that to what is in drawing 1, we're talking about over 7,000 students. So you worry about the impact. This is a relatively unpopulated as far as in comparison with those drawing 1 and 2 and design 1 and 2. So you're not going to have a negative impact on as many institutions or instructions going on right now. And in fact, you're probably going to improve the viability of this course because students are going to be pushed to it because it's in the field of study. And if you put it in the field of study, let's make it what it needs to be. So I think that strategy is probably the best. Yes, sir.
My concern, and I really appreciate, by the way, the detail in which you described this. My concern in the committee, the outcomes committee, relying strongly on extant syllabi, is that I think this committee is making the case that there needs to be a very particular kind of set of learning outcomes, which may in fact not correspond to what's currently in the field. And so I'm curious about the balance. Does our recommendation for the core outcomes outweigh potentially what's currently being done?
I hate to say one way or the other what we're going to find out, and I don't know how you know exactly. I don't know exactly around this room, but we're talking about looking at all institutions. So I can't say for sure that that they're not going to do this. When we start looking at syllabus, they're not going to do what you want. But certainly, if we give us a direction, that's the direction we'll go in.
Okay. Yeah, because my concern would be if we in this committee for the FOS are deciding this course needs to have these outcomes, but then it's out of our hands whether it actually does or not, then that's.
It's not exactly out of your hands. You can put yourself on that committee. You can get yourself nominated to be in the work group. That's one way. The other way, there will be a public comment.
We would just like the message to be clear from this committee that we're talking about a topic that has undergone, extended evolution over the last 20 years. And even the term digital art has in many ways passed as a term. And what we're saying is explicitly that these kinds of skills need to be in foundations.
Well, this is already public record. We've discussed it for 90 minutes. I'm sure the message has been, they will know how we feel.
I just looked up the course syllabus at my school on the digital art, and they're already doing what you're asking within the assignments. So they're listed there. And when I go through the SLOs on this, they're pretty open. It seems like it would be easy for anyone to implement this already within the course that's there.
The SLOs for 2348, those are, because they're not written yet here, those are just written by each college, so it may vary from one college.
So it would not apply here?
Yeah, one college, the studio courses have not been written here yet, so every college has written their own, so that's going to change.
It sounds to me like I'm going to acquiesce to the pressure that we move on. So I think that we've covered that topic pretty well. So we voted in favor of 2348 being in the draft yes column for the FOS with the added information that it be considered as a part of foundations and 4D.
For the record, I'm sorry, was it unanimous, or was there any abstentions, or an abstention?
Okay. Next on our list is what? Is it drawing 2?
I think it's a group. Sorry, I think it's a group thing, choice. Of like painting 1, sculpture 1, printmaking 1, art metals 1, ceramics 1, digital. Oh, well, take digital off. Oh, please.
So what I proposed from, just as a proposal on the table from UNT, is that there be it'd be choose 6 hours from the courses below, and there would be all the level 1 media courses, photo 1, ceramics 1, whatever they are. And then a second would be choose 6 semester credit hours from the courses below, and that would be level 1 or level 2 courses that are available. Those would certainly serve our needs. It still leaves us shy of the number of hours that we have long expected of our freshman sophomore sequence, but it certainly makes it possible for students to progress and move into a major at the junior year.
So you're talking about 24 credits?
Altogether, it would be 30 credits.
Okay.
There's 18 in the freshman year, and there'd be 6 and 6 in the so 2 courses each semester in the sophomore year.
But those 2 advanced courses, 2,000 level courses won't count towards. I mean, we'll have to accept them, but they won't count as.
Well, I don't know how you deal with that. My understanding from Alan is, in fact, you would have to revise your curriculum so that they did count, so students aren't being asked to take a ceramics 2 course and pay for it a second time.
But a ceramics 2 course at a community college is not equivalent to a ceramics 2 course at a 4-year college.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying that my understanding is if we get to a level 2 course as a requirement of FOS, then all the 4-year institutions will be required to accept those.
I think the same, what Jeffrey was saying is that I think we just offer the 1,000 level courses. We offer the first level courses of each discipline, and then students just will take whatever extra classes because they'll do it anyways.
But what would those classes count for? If they take extra 1,000 level, or 2,000 level classes, sorry, if they take extra 2,000 level classes because they're going to do it anyway, then when they transfer, if it's not an FOS, then we have defeated the purpose, and they're taking classes that won't count toward their major, because almost none of us at four-year have more than maybe 3 hours available of elective at the 1,000, 2,000 level class. So I think that as a logic, that defeats the purpose of the FOS. Am I correct?
Yes, to an extent, although on the other hand, there's no obligation that we have to fill up every single one of the 60 hours. Like, remember, some of the fields of study are very small. They're 12 or 18 or 22 semester credit hours, 21 semester credit hours. If there's some room for students to take a free elective, then we're not, those hours aren't necessarily wasted. They won't apply as requirements to the major, but they have to take 60 hours anyway to get an associate degree.
Right, but if you're going to tell a student that when you graduate FOS complete and you take 18 hours or you take 24 hours and then they come to the four-year institution and we can require no other 2,000 level classes and they just fill that up with other art classes, which might benefit them, then that is exactly the opposite of what the FOS is doing, because then they're taking classes that will fill no requirements and we're increasing their financial burden, right?
Well, yes, when you look at, yeah, there's two ways of looking at it. Like I said, one is if a student is, that not everything in the 60 hours is necessarily going to apply to the degree, right? It never will if they transfer with 60 hours. You're talking about a situation where a student would want to transfer prior to getting a full 60 hours, which is fine. They can transfer as soon as they get the field of study completed, even if they haven't finished the core, they haven't done any electives or anything. But for those students who are going to take to maximize the amount of time they can take courses at the lower cost, right? Then they're going to complete their first 60 hours at the community college to save as much money as possible. And we don't have to account for every single one of the 60 hours that they take in the field of study if you don't feel it's necessary. If you feel it's necessary, then do. But if your field of study is less than the total of 60 hours, that's okay. Students can still take an elective course.
But if we accept, so we have 18 hours that we've just agreed upon at the freshman year. If we accept an additional 6 hours in the FOS, and then they just take extra hours, right? And those don't, I mean, at that point, we would suggest, I mean, at that point, I would say, you know, the FOS and core classes is what you should take, and you should not take other art classes because they're not going to count toward the degree to which you're going to matriculate. I mean, I guess I'm not understanding the point because it limits us. We can then no longer offer or require any other 2,000 level classes when they show up if they're FOS complete. Is that correct?
That's right.
So that creates, at least for some schools, a major sort of limitation. And if students are taking lots of extra art classes because they are art students and that's really their desire, and we don't create a path for it.
If they're totally free electives, they may not even choose to take art. They may take a political science class. They may take creative writing class.
Mm-hmm. But Alan,
not likely with art students.
I think part of the problem here is like with our the first 2 years for us, it's 33 hours of art courses. And I have them run through the printmaking, the drawing, the painting, the graphics, etc. Now, if those courses aren't in this, how do I get them into an advanced course where it's a prerequisite?
Well, if it's a prerequisite, then you need to consider strongly putting it in the field of study.
Well, then that means I need 33 hours.
If the field of study, yeah, and make it the size that it has to be. We'll work around it. Institutions will work around it. If you need a 33-hour field of study, then make one. If you don't need all those hours, then don't put the burden on four-year institutions to try to cut their upper division courses to make room for all these courses to apply to their 120-hour degree plan. Yeah, that's why you have to walk this line of making the field of study not too big and not too small.
So with with respect to North Texas, I think you all have a lot more 200 level classes, non-upper division, lower division classes in your first 2 years than some of the rest of us might. I know that we have a number of lower division classes, and actually our sophomores start taking upper division classes, right? So in a sense, what I might move is that we have 4 courses in the 1,000 level. So on the Choose X of the courses below, we list every single one of these first disciplines and say choose 4 of these. And that will get us up to 30, I'm doing quick math here.
Up to 30.
Right, so yeah, that wouldn't solve your 2,000 problem, I hear you. But it would allow the students to take plenty of arts classes that then would count, generally speaking, to the 4-year program, I think, in most of our other 4-year contexts.
If we did like 12 hours, you're saying?
Yeah.
Of the
1,000.
1,000?
No, not 1,000. That's not
That's what I
accurate.
proposed
Because
last
Photo
night.
1's a 2,000 level class. Ceramics is a 2,000 level class. So
I apologize. I mean, blank 1, right? And I don't. I mean, the 1, 2. I don't know. I mean, again, I'll defer to your conversation on that. Do we want to have the second semester or not?
we would strongly advocate for the second semester of any of those sequences. 2,000 level classes are skill building classes, and I mean, even in a ceramics 2 at our institution, I mean, they're learning wheel based in ceramics 1 and hand building in ceramics 2.
Fair.
There's, I mean, so is that really a 3,000 level class? I don't know your curriculum and I don't know what you're teaching, but it seems to me that no matter where you are, no matter what that number is, you're teaching basic sort of skill-based stuff, and then you get past that, and then you start talking about, now let's really talk about making art out of that. And so those seem like really different kinds of classes to me, and seem actually really quite appropriate at the 2,000 level. Just in terms of the content of most Photo 1, Photo 2, you know, those sorts of classes. So we would argue for the inclusion of a second level in that sequence, but then there are other four-year institutions for whom that would create a problem.
Well, I mean, my experience is certainly that transfers that come in wanting to transfer credit for a level 2 of a specialization really struggle because they didn't get those skills that are expected. And it's not always simply like, well, it's inadequate skills or whatever. It's different. It's different cultures, it's different shops, different facilities. You know, we're talking about fields of study that are dependent on a lot of equipment and technology, and there's a lot of variation. There are no two facilities that are going to be the same, right? So every facility has its own sort of culture, and that makes it really hard on the transfer student. So for that reason, I mean, I've often told students, like, look, I'll transfer your print credit, but I'll transfer it as print 3. Because I need you to take print 1. Because print 1 is because if I don't give certain information to the first print class that I have, if I wait, that doesn't make any sense to wait to give them information about the culture of that space, how this space works, right? But the transfers don't know that.
So how do you handle that in terms of the number of advanced hours that are required?
I mean,
because
in print, I can handle it on a one-by-one basis pretty easily, but I'm trying to think, how do we handle this in a larger sense? I mean, to me, it makes sense that the FOS and what we guarantee will transfer should be about breadth, not about specialization. And so I would probably argue that we transfer for level 1s of specializations, but not higher than that, because what is the point, you know, of the 4-year schools if not this kind of specialized, very specialized knowledge and experience and mentorship?
I agree. We still have 2 years to deliver that.
I think that I think that your problem is kind of unique to larger universities, and coming from a mid-size, and I know there's schools that are even smaller, we don't have maybe Ceramics 1, Ceramics 2, Ceramics 3, Ceramics 4. We have some of these classes are beginning and advanced, and so the upper level, the second level is, we have to be that has to be advanced courses for us. So I also agree that level 1 courses should be limited in the field to the field of study, not level 2.
I also wanted to point out that in our institution, we have animation and gaming, it's film and video. These courses are not listed in my copy of the ACGM. And it's a bit of a concern if we put a lot in there, as those particular fields require a lot of specialization early on.
Which classes were those?
Film and video and animation, gaming, and currently, unfortunately, also our design program is bound by the studio that we're discussing, because it doesn't have its own separate CIP yet.
I mean, that's essentially the same for communication design, which I've withheld because that's going to be a separate FOS. But yeah, I really see that problem. I mean, I think that may, I don't know. Does that may require that those tracks, that those fields get a different?
Well, for some flexibilities in our institution, it would be handy to have design communications, whatever that what it's called. Yeah, design communications 12313 also on that list options, and for the other body to include like typography and layout and stuff. There's some basic design courses not in the ACGM.
I'm not a voting member of this body, so I mean, you know, it would serve us well. I think it might make enrollments in level 2 classes in community colleges greater if it was required. If it does not meet the needs of the remaining, you know, 4-year institutions, and where we are the outlier, then we will end up having to adjust our curriculum as required by the FOS. I mean, all of this.
Not sure I understand how that would require you to change your curriculum.
Because we require that you have to have a level 1 and level 2 in the sophomore year to get in, to become a major in any of our studio programs. So we'd have to rewrite all of our curriculum to make that happen, because we could not then go back and add a requirement for a level 2 sophomore level class for an FOS complete student.
And so that's really presuming that all students will transfer from 2-year to 4-year institutions only at the completion of 2 years at the 2-year institution. Is that, do we have data that backs that up? I mean, from my perspective, the sooner they transfer, the better, but.
So, I mean, I think maybe one thing that could be a happy medium is, I'm just looking at this chart here and taking out the painting to, ceramics to, water, photography to, and putting them, and then maybe putting them in a separate section of choose courses, and adding maybe life drawing and another course, so that they have the option of choosing a level 1 or a level 2, so that we're not handicapping students who are wanting to transfer to UNT, and I'm speaking for my students because that's the closest university, and maybe also add that 2311 in that section. So it's, again, an advising issue. I think a lot of this is advising issues that they're trying to solve. And so if your program doesn't accept, or they can't move on, then they should know what schools they're planning on going to before their second semester sophomore year, which is when they would take those second level 2 courses.
Except that in, I believe in the guidelines, if we include it here, if we include ceramics too, then at San Antonio, UT San Antonio, they would not be able to require a student to take a second ceramics 2 class. So if it's on this list, then it's on this list, and UT San Antonio has no option but to figure out how to adapt to that. So,
but I think they can adapt by just changing your numbers. You could, I mean, you're more easily to change numbers than we are in terms of ACGM, so you could turn it into a 3,000 level class, and then you'd have 1, 2, 3.
Well, our ceramics 2 already is a 3,000 level class.
Oh, I see, okay.
All of our
So that's why it doesn't
All of our
transfer over.
upper level studio classes are 3,000.
Yeah.
Or 4,000.
Ours too.
So, I mean, that's really the rub, is that
Right.
it sounds like, at least in this room, we're the only four-year institution that has a level 1 and 2 at the 2,000 level.
Ooh, maybe you can change your numbers.
We just did.
Oh, to 3,000?
We just changed them to 2,000.
2,000, oh my God.
Because they're skill-building classes, and they're
Right.
appropriate at the 2,000 level, and it plays better with our two-year fellow institutions, of which we have many in our region. So, you know, it actually made better sense to serve our student population, and based on the quality of the classes. I'm not arguing that there's not cultural issues in terms of the way the studios work and the kind of equipment and orientation to that. I mean, I know that all exists, but we felt like, you know, in the interest of the student and their pocketbook, that we would just figure out how to make that work. And so that's why we took a wholesale approach and changed our entire studio program to include that, so that in fact we could serve the students in a different way, and we would just have to figure out how to make up for the deficits they bring with them relative to the various cultures in our various programs. So
Yeah, I wanted to kind of tie that in with stepping back to something you said about there's kind of an understanding that any transfer student comes in behind, and I would like to look at two different scenarios. The transfer student that willfully decides to move from one school to another, you know, move across state or move somewhere else and uproots their life, they may incur like an extra year because they did that. But however, we're looking at a different situation right now. We're trying to build a solid bridge, or dare I say pathway, that students at two-year community colleges can successfully move into a four-year college without being behind. And this serves our population. This serves our students who are, you know, they don't have the financial means to enter a four-year college, or perhaps their SAT scores weren't good enough for immediate entry, but they made better and they wanted to improve themselves. The two-year colleges allow students with rigor to apply for scholarships, and that will make four-year colleges affordable. I see it's very important to have a process for students that don't have the means to be able to migrate into a four-year academic institution and obtain that degree. And I'm here as a two-year college willing to make some difficult choices for our school curriculum that will benefit the students moving forward, but I want to see it on both sides of the table. Right.
Well said, Rebecca. I agree with you.
I'm sorry. I hadn't realized South Plains really has. I mean, they introduced the 60 by 30 pathways. I mean, they're on board. They're just all for it. They've been making a lot of deals, and I guess, you know, deal is a bad word, but a lot of
Oh, really?
Agreements with our neighboring universities, our neighboring four-year schools. I hadn't really realized the number of differences until now between what was 1,000, what was 2,000, and even getting into what the 4 years considered a 3,000. I hadn't realized how many differences lay in there. So what we've tried to do at SPC is talk to Texas Tech, talks to West Texas A&M, Lubbock Christian, any place who's going to want to look at what our students do with those numbers, and you know, the idea now that you know, a drawing two has become this entirely different thing now from where I'm sitting. I teach drawing two, and now making that thing kind of an option. I just want to make sure that with regard to pathways, since they got brought up, that's not going to kind of derail what we've set up with our 4 years. Because I like to let my students know that you know, Texas Tech is not the only school they can go to after they leave South Plains. You know, I try to push them to places like UNT, UTSA, and I just want to make sure that in terms of what we need for the FOS, all these numbers are going to work out.
I think drawing 2 is an exception to the second level courses because there's drawing 1 is in the required FOS. So I would suggest that drawing 2 get moved up into the first level of choices.
Yeah.
Drawing
Can I
and
just add
painting should be
something?
out altogether, right? That's a non-majors course.
The drawing and painting?
It's a non-majors course. It's not usually accepted. I don't think it's
Correct.
usually
That should not
accepted.
be there.
Yeah, that should not be there.
Before we do anything else, can I just say, what I came out of here yesterday is because of the ACGM, the two-year colleges are very set into what we have to do, where the four-year institutions have much more variety of what's going on. So I think what we need to do here as far as the field of study is we need to leave it broad enough that our students can really figure out where they're going next and what do they have to do. And as Chris was saying about the pathways, we're in the process too of, and you're, Natalie, as well, we're going to four-year institutions and we're saying, what do you need on this pathway and how do we do this most successfully? And Michael will be coming to see you soon, I'm sure. And, you know, we've been at University UH Clear Lake, and we just had a great meeting a week ago where we really hammered out a lot of things. You know, so I think this can all be figured out, but I think we need to leave it broad enough that the students have the choice to pick what they want. And if they need to have a second level course, they would have to be advised that that's what's going to need to happen. But if we make this really limited, then it's going to limit what happens when they get to your four-year institution.
I don't think that's an option,
Or if we could have a
is it?
list of the 2,000 level courses that you would accept in a field of study from the junior colleges, then it would help us a lot to understand how we could put this together so that we're not stepping on any toes by teaching those courses that they need to take when they get to the university.
Well, I mean, unless I'm mistaken, this is an all or nothing, right? So we cannot require a level 2 class from an FOS complete student unless everybody is willing to accept that. I mean, or everybody would be obligated if it made it onto this list. If a level 2,
we can't decide it by a class basis?
if the student is FOS complete, then we have to take whatever that FOS complete list is.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying, though, is like you were saying drawing 2 was important, right? That you needed to teach that at your level? No? I thought you did. Somebody was saying drawing 2? Yes.
No, but actually, I was going to follow up on that. We can recommend to folks at Lynn or and FOS that the student will be more successful if they take course level 2, right? We can't make them do it. I think the space is still there for conversations about that if the student takes it, then their ability to move into upper division will be much more smooth.
No, because if we don't require a level 2 course in the FOS, then I cannot continue to require a level 2 class at the sophomore level because I can't add a 2,000 level requirement at my institution that's outside of the requirement of the FOS. Is that correct, Ellen?
I don't think that's true.
But you could.
Yes, that's correct. Again, for your transfer students only, not for your native students.
Right.
You could also include that course as a list of designated electives along with some other courses in the upper division. So you could give the student the option of taking it. And if the student really needs it, you could advise the student that that would be a good choice to take.
But if they
You could
chose
also have
not
it as a
to-
free elective, and you could guide the student towards taking it if you feel that student really needs it. So
But I
those
couldn't
are the
require
ways
it.
in which you could get another lower division course in.
But I couldn't require it.
You couldn't require it.
But I really want to, I mean, I appreciate you raising this because I want this clarified. This is true of transfer students. We cannot require of transfer students they take additional courses. But if a student comes in as a freshman to our institution, we can put whatever requirements we want, 200, 100, whatever. What that might create, so this is a problem potentially, is different pathways for native versus transfer students. And that, it depends whether we can live with that or not. But I don't think we are required to change our curriculum for students who come in as freshmen according to the FOS. The FOS is a transfer mechanism, correct?
It's only if they come in FOS complete.
Right.
If they transfer
Right.
along the way,
Right.
then it's this course by course, and
Right.
we accept
Right.
it as they come.
Right.
But if they're
So-
FOS complete,
Right.
we can then make no other requirements
Right.
of those students at the freshman or sophomore level.
So again, I think the interesting question is, how many students are in fact coming out of community colleges FOS complete? I mean, maybe more will as time passes. Right now, apparently not very many.
Right.
If a student is transferring to your institution and they're FOS complete, they're most likely going to be at the sophomore level, applying to the junior level, and wouldn't they have to take the portfolio review at that point?
Right, but they can't take a portfolio review until, based on our current curriculum, until they've taken the second level class, which is a 2000 level class.
Where I was
And then
thinking,
could
where I was
require
heading with that is if that may be an area where you just find them, you may find that they don't meet the portfolio requirements. And, I mean, if you're...
They don't qualify for the portfolio review until they've taken the second level class.
Well, I mean, I can't argue the requirements if it becomes field of study. If it does become field of study, they'll be waived. But when they present their portfolio, if you find they are not developed enough in certain studio areas because they didn't perhaps take the level 2 studio, at that point, wouldn't you have the option to say, you have not met our portfolio requirements, you will have to take photography and drawing too, and you can apply next year or next semester? Is there a category for that?
I don't believe we could require that they go back and take a 2000 level class that they may have already taken. We could say
Advise
it's an
them.
option. I'm arguing here from the point of view of the curriculum we currently have in place. What I think we are probably not comfortable with is creating differing pathways for transfer students from our native students. And so we need a single. If this body says we're just not going to accept a level 2, then we'll go back and rethink our curriculum so that it works for FOS complete, because presumably that number will increase as we have this agreement in place and students can maximize their dollars and their path toward graduation at a two-year institution. So if we have to, we'll make changes.
I have a question/comment. So if, I'm just going to stick with ceramics. If they take ceramics 2, and it's a 2000 level class, and it's in the FOS, and then they transfer to University of Texas, but their ceramics 2 is a 3000 level class, can they still require that 3000 level ceramics 2 class?
Yes.
That's a good question. That's ultimately up to the institution to determine the course equivalencies. You don't want the student to repeat significant course content. So if the courses are mostly similar, it would be in the student's best interest to give them credit for that upper division level class. If, however, you feel that your upper division level class is significantly different, and by that means significantly, I mean there's a different, sometimes it happens for more academic courses. I can use the example. An upper division course will have a much greater writing requirement. It will have a much greater research requirement. It's a course that deals with research methods as well as the course content. It often has a special topics focus to it that is different from the very general sophomore level course. In a case like that, you could have a course in Mexican-American studies at the lower division not be equivalent to a course in Mexican-American studies at the upper division if it meets all those criteria I just decided. But you would have, each institution would have to determine that. It would seem to me if a student's taken ceramics, I mean, you need to consider these things of where a course really belongs. If a course belongs at the upper division level, then it doesn't need to be in the field of study. If that's where it's most often taught, and we have that data here. If ceramics 2 is most often taught as an upper division level course, then you might not want to put it in the field of study because that would cramp the style of many universities that are teaching it that way.
That's what we need.
I also have a different concern with having the ceramics 2, et cetera, simply because in our program, we don't have that many student numbers. They're going slightly down in some of the traditional classic arts. And We have about 100 transfer students a year, which actually outnumbers our incoming freshmen, which is about 90 to 80. So a large number of our student population is actually transfer, and if they're taking ceramics 2, and we only offer really just 2 levels of ceramics in our program, it would probably have a negative effect, and not only in that course alone, but also sculpture and other areas.
Yes, but if you're offering those in your sophomore level, are you offering them sophomore year? Are they 3,000 level classes that are in your degree plan in your sophomore year?
Yeah, we do, like the ceramics is at a 3,000 level, but as Alan is mentioning, if a student comes in, they say, well, I already took 2 semesters of ceramics. Why do I have, and I already took a ceramics 2. It'll be, and if the descriptions and the student learning outcomes are essentially the same, because they developed their ceramics 2 program essentially off of the ACGM, but it's at a 3,000 level, then it's hard to argue against that.
Can't you just do a course substitution when that happens by checking the syllabus and talking to the institution?
We
that's
do,
what
of
we
course,
used to do at the
we
university.
do that, but so they get the course, so our 3,000 level ceramics class, we give them credit for that, but it meets the requirement for the ceramics class, but it doesn't meet the requirement for upper level credit, because it came from a 2-year college that can't offer upper level credit.
Okay.
There are
it
so
looks like it's
few.
being offered at 4 universities now, but according to what we're looking at about these most popular programs here, it's only required at the lower division at 1 institution, which is UT El Paso. So there must be 3 other universities therefore that are offering it, and presumably they're offering it at the upper division level. But it's not a widely offered course, and it certainly isn't a very widely required course among the existing programs.
For UNT, you actually only have the degree plan here for drawing and painting. We have 7 different studio degree plans. So in the ceramics program, ceramics 2 would be on this list as a required
Fair enough.
class.
Right. That's true.
There are so few level 2 courses in the ACGM that I feel that if we're adding the level 2s to this field of study, you're only going to get photographers, you're only going to get ceramicists, or you're only going to get painters.
Well, we'd have to add all of the, yeah.
Yeah, but we would be leaving out sculptors or art medals too, or any of the other level 2s that are already taken out of the ACGM. So if we have a level 2 requirement in field of study, I think you're forcing students that don't necessarily want to be photographers into more photography.
Well,
or more
that's what-
ceramicist into, non-ceramicist into ceramics too.
that's what the 2311 is for. Or that's what we use it for, I should say, as an advanced or the second level of sculpture, of metals, of printmaking.
After this, I'll probably go to my college and try and adopt that course, but we don't have that course in our books.
It's in the ACGM, so.
It is in the ACGM, it's not in our books for classes that we can teach right now.
Well, I think 2311 should be in that list of choices. And I think that solves the problem of second level classes.
Yeah, and that way you could feed them through that.
I would also like 2313 Design Communications 1 in that grouping as well.
2311 only solves the problem for people who are not interested in painting, ceramics, or photography.
Well, for us, there's, in our school, they're going to choose a certain number of those courses. We require studio majors to take painting, sculpture, printmaking, ceramics, photography, life drawing. So all of those are required. So we're already going to, if they come in and they only have to take 3, they're already going to come in without having taken all the things that we require our native students to take.
But if they take okay. If 2311 is essentially being used in most places as a version 2 of another course, then 2311 doesn't make sense to be on that first list either.
On the second list, the second.
But the second list doesn't work for anybody but us.
Well, if it's on the first list, it can be, if it's in the field of study and we're required to give students credit for it, we can plug it in where we're needed. So if it's a Ceramics 2 class, we can give them credit fit it in where it's needed.
But you can't if then you are asking them to take a Ceramics 2 at a 3,000 level at your institution. There is a dramatic difference in the course content between that Ceramics 2 and your Ceramics 2. So you can't just plug that in.
Well, that's
a problem. Yeah, what I'm
there's
really
only
hearing,
one of.
What I'm really hearing from the body is that except for us, there is no place, no other institution where it would be acceptable to have Photo 2, Ceramics 2, Painting 2, or on this list. Am I correct in that?
Yes, except for maybe the 2311, which is the catch-all. That might fit.
But then that,
I just want a little clarification on how these two choose boxes are working. Are they working together or separately?
You choose. What I proposed was choose 6 hours from the first group and 6 hours from the second group.
They're separate.
I mean, they'd be separate. So there'd be 12 hours altogether in the sophomore year.
Okay, all right. It just seems, I love that, but those level 2 courses, it's a battle to have them actually transfer as an actual course. And I think that's what we're trying to pave this way for students.
I would argue for it, but clearly, as a 4-year institution representative, I am in the dramatic majority. And if the vote here is to not include it, then we will figure out how to adjust our curriculum relative to the FOS requirements.
What if, we have the first box, fairly straightforward, blank 1. If the second box included all those and the other 3, that would potentially, now there'll be a lot of advising involved in doing this right, allow places the option of having the students take all level 1 courses and therefore have more flexibility, or a combination of level 1 and level 2 courses if they want specifically to go to y'all.
No, but if it's on that list and it's a Ceramics 2 and they've taken it and then they decide to transfer to UT San Antonio, and UT San Antonio has to accept the level 2 ceramics class as their level 2 class.
Okay, understood.
So, either it's included and it's acceptable, or it's not included.
Got it.
I believe. Is that correct?
No, I think you're right.
Yeah. We either include them or we don't include them.
I'm wondering, though, how many that will affect in terms of students transferring if it becomes something that it can be advised. But I think that's an interesting idea, is having all the classes in both of those sections, and it's really an advising issue. So, if you are going to transfer to one of these schools that don't take those second level, then you should be taking your sculpture 1, your printmaking 1, your ceramics 1, and your life drawing 1, and then that's it. That's all you get, and you transfer. But if you want to go to UNT, then you have to take metals 1, and then you have to take your design 3, or 2311, and then it's about advising. You're not handicapping the students who want to go to UNT, you're not handicapping the students who want to go to Texas State. Hopefully we can advise enough where they take those level 1s and get those done, or they have the option to do the level 2s.
But I would concur with that notion. A lot of, it hasn't been said that much, but a lot of on the lower division side, or the 2-year school side, we make a big effort to converse with the students and inquire of them where they believe they're going to transfer to, and then we look at the requirements. Just in this case, whether some of the second level sophomore courses are allowed or not. Many times they're not, and advise accordingly.
So under Natalie's suggestion, then all the classes from the first group would also occur on the second list too. Okay.
But I'm coming back to your point that, yes, and if you do advise a student to take the 2-level course and then they go to an institution which would prefer not to accept 2-level courses, that institution still has to accept those courses because they are in the FOS, right? So I like the idea, and yet I hear your concern that the institution would have to find some way to manage, to slot those courses into some requirements, right?
It could be possible for the 4 institutions to change their ceramics 2 name to a different name.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, so it's actually not a sequential number name, but a topic name,
Right.
and therefore, I mean, they would have to accept the ceramics 2 as a class, but then they would still take the 3,000 level class.
And I guess it would depend how disruptive it would be to the institutions. Right? I mean, the institution might decide the numbers are not such and the disruption is not such that we need to change our native structure in order to make this work. So, I mean, I like the flexibility this provides, and I do agree that it does throw a curveball to institutions that they do have to accept the level 2 classes even if they don't have a spot for them. And maybe, again, if UNT is the only one where this level 2 acceptance at the lower division level is feasible, then I don't know if that's such a good idea, because it would help you all, but actually it would make everybody else change their approach, right?
Exactly.
So,
But it's advising again, so you could just tell those students who are planning on going somewhere else, do not take those level 2. I mean, there's a lot of advising happening in the community college, and I think we have a little bit more of a personal touch. We don't have graduate students teaching our classes. We have adjuncts, but not that many. And so I think we have this communication where we can say, okay, if you're going here, this is this is where you need to go, and these are the classes that you need to be taking.
And we would, in fact, as part of our website, when we have degree plans that students download, we would actually explicitly address that in our documents as well, saying you'd be required to take this class. And San Antonio may say, ceramics 2 is an option, but it's best that you not take that class there, but you take it at our institution because of the content or whatever.
Right.
I mean, so I mean, there are ways to address it. I mean, are those foolproof? I don't think any of this is foolproof, no matter what we do.
I would like to ask, because historically the level 2 studios they do have a 2,000 number, which is a sophomore number, and they are now appearing at the junior level in the 4-year colleges. Could the 4-year colleges please provide some history on when they changed them to the 3,000 level and why? Because I'd like clarification on that.
Mine has been the 3,000 level since before I started in 2000, so it's just always been that way.
What was the reason?
It's before my time.
Okay.
Yeah, over 2 decades that it's been. I mean, from when these courses were created, literally probably in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And
Same here.
Level 2 was 3,000 at that time. Yeah.
And I think our schools are smaller. I mean, ours is much smaller than UNT, which has a concentration in ceramics. Is that correct? So all of these areas, you have you have a degree in ceramics, you have a degree in metals, you have a degree in sculpture. We have a studio arts degree, so we don't have enough ceramics classes. If you're going to, that's part of our 3D track, so it's one of the upper level 3D classes.
I mean, that's another factor, is we occasionally have stacked classes. So right now, I mean, for many years, level 2 of printmaking was stacked all the way through to thesis. And over the last 6 years, I have grown the program so that level 2 can be a standalone class. It's no longer stacked, which has been great because I can really specialize content. And then the last 2 levels, which are thesis 1 and 2, have been grouped with painting and drawing so that my printmaking majors don't get too print-centric. But the point is that now I have a stacked class that's levels 3 through 5 of printmaking. That's manageable, but I am looking at the reality. I mean, we're all looking at the reality, like whose enrollment drops, just to kind of put it on the table, right? And so it's a real issue. And if we're talking about like the specialization, I don't want those enrollments to drop.
Which classes are you looking at the enrollment dropping in? It may be that I was typing and I missed
Well, if we start getting more and more transfers coming in and I'm accepting level 2, it will no longer be a standalone class at Texas State. It will not get enough students to make. So then it would go back into the stacked class. So instead of just 3 through 5, it would be 2 through 5 again.
But maybe
Right.
then it would be a level 3 that's more independent. You know, so it may change some enrollment, but it might move it to, so now you can offer a level 3 that's standalone,
Then
and
I
then
would
a
have,
4 or 5.
and then 4 and 5 won't make either, and
Well, you could maybe stack those instead. So, I mean, and I know it's an adjustment, and all this is kind of an adjustment, but I do think that, again, trying to advise, and I don't know, I realize we're all fighting for students, and we all want our classes to make, and we all want to teach what we want to teach, but what is best for the student in the end? And I think to really kind of handicap them in any of these areas would be a shame. If we can find a way that it's adjustable for everybody and can be an advising thing, then I think that's the direction it should go. But
And if I can just say, too, back to this idea of keeping it flexible, we're really being charged now with knowing what transfers to every institution that we feed into. And we're really being squeezed with that. Like, we have to come up with these pathways that are so specific that all the things will transfer. So I think if we can leave the FOS flexible at the 2-year level right now, there's this guidance that's happening that I think would make this, once again, it would never be 100%, but I think leaving it flexible is going to make it more successful for individual institutions than making it very specific.
yeah, we're going to call a recess for 10 minutes, so we'll be back at 11.
Okay, thank you all.
We are a behemoth. I mean, the nearest.
We do what now?
I mean, from the introductions yesterday, the nearest program is 750. And we're 20.
and move things along, because if we are going to have different tracks, we haven't even gotten one nailed down yet, so,
Yeah.
and it's 11. So
we have 15 minutes to finish this track.
yeah.
Then I make a motion that the choose 2 of the courses below for painting 1, sculpture, printmaking, art metals, ceramics 1, photography 1, watercolor, life drawing, drawing 2, and design communications 1 be added to the draft of the FOS proposal.
Is there a second?
Oh, that was a lot of information.
Basically, he's saying, he's proposing what's visually in front of us is that would be the case for choose 2 in the first. So the level 1s, including drawing 2.
Seconded.
Why wouldn't we put drawing 2 in the second category to give people who are interested in hand media an option? Because my understanding is they're going to be required to take 6 credits of each.
Drawing 1's already required, so it makes sense to put it under the first category instead of the second.
Drawing 1?
Drawing 1 is already required, if you'll notice at the top of the screen.
Yeah, so you see what he's saying? So drawing 1 is not in group 1. Drawing 1 is already required.
Because drawing 1's already required previously.
Right, but did we actually vote on that, that it being as a standalone? I don't recall us voting on it as a standalone. We only yesterday voted on it being included in the draft. I actually don't agree with it being a standalone because of this emphasis of other media that's not dependent on hand-drawn, like photography or digital. I would put drawing 1 in one of the two categories. of
Yeah, but
selection.
I think that people, then they have the option of not taking it. Drawing one is like, it's a must.
Not for photographers or digital, maybe digital.
It's
painting.
organizing space visually.
If a photographer
It was
is going to do
photography.
this is studio art BFA, I think the BFA, is that correct, that we're
Yes.
talking about? If a photographer is coming to a studio art BFA, they would be most likely. I can't imagine a program where they wouldn't have to take drawing.
Well, more importantly, I think that even in ours, where we have separate tracks for every degree, in a studio art BFA, no matter what your track is, you're still required to take courses from, many courses from the other 6 studio tracks, and drawing is going to be an integral part of that experience at some point, no matter where you are in terms of the coursework you take. Your argument makes sense if they are only taking photography classes, period, and no other studio classes. But I don't know that that's the case in any of our institutions where a photography student does not also have to take a printmaking class. Or
Drawing 1 is the highest studio arts enrollment, according to the data, after art appreciation, art history 1.
It's not my own preference. I mean, I came to photography from drawn media. It's my observation over 12 years that I lose many photography students because they're not drawn to hand-rendered media. They're thinking spatially. And they're working, they are organizing space, but in a different manner.
Rebecca, how do they go back in and retouch their photographs and everything else? I mean, my students, they use Wacom tablets, and it's a drawing skill. It's just a different tool.
Well, I do sympathize a little bit with what you're saying, Rebecca, because our film and video students also push back on drawing skills because they think they also don't need it.
But are those film and media students also being required to take some coursework in the other disciplines in studio?
Yes, currently they are.
Then basic understanding of drawing is going to be necessary for those other courses they're required to take, whether they like it or not. There's a lot of things I learned in school that I did not like, but I needed, so.
Well, we didn't vote on it, so I guess if you guys want to make a movement and vote on it, I'll just
I'll make a
be happy to
motion that we
abstain.
accept those standalone courses before we proceed to choose those 6 courses as.
So the motion on the table is to accept those standalone requirements in the FOS, this draft FOS, as they are before moving on to vote on the menu of courses.
Second.
Is that correct?
Any second?
Second.
Wait, are we?
Okay, so for the record and for those watching online, that includes Art History 1, Art History 2, Design 1, Design 2, Drawing 1, and Digital Art.
Agreed. All in favor? All opposed? It passes.
I think we have one abstention.
Oh,
I'll abstain, but
abstention. Okay.
I'm not going to oppose it.
Okay, so we have officially put in Art History 1, Art History 2, Design 1, Design 2, Drawing 1, and Digital Art into the FOS studio track. So move on to the first menu. Choose 2 of the courses below: Painting 1, Sculpture 1, Printmaking 1, Art Metals 1, Ceramics 1, Photography 1, Watercolor 1, Life Drawing 1, and Design Communications 1.
I believe my initial motion, which is still on the table theoretically, Drawing 2 was also included in that first block.
Drawing 2.
And is the motion for the list to be accepted, or for the list and only 2?
Let's start with
the number of hours
Let's
from
start
that
with the list, maybe?
Okay.
Let's start with the first list.
The first list, yes. Do
I
we
move
have-
to accept the first list as is on the draft.
Well, let's,
2.
we're not addressing that yet.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
the list.
Second.
Just the list.
Second, it's been seconded. Any discussion?
Okay, sorry, I'm just going to ask, I'm not, drawing isn't my area, but life drawing is considered drawing 3. So would it be served to move that to the lower one, again, for students that are involved in hand media and drawing, that they would have something to progress into? Good point.
Do we have a motion to move drawing 1 into the second category? I'm sorry, life drawing? Second? All in favor?
Aye. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I'm just a pain in the butt, I'm sorry, but, gosh, you guys. There was, UTSA had stated that this could be an area to put 2311 in as well.
We're just focusing on the first section.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you moved to the second. I'm good.
I mean, at Texas State, drawing 2 is life drawing.
Oh,
Is there any way that is there any reason to just go drawing 2 / life drawing, or?
Same at Sammy's, but
I'm not sure.
we can be
Not according to the ACGM.
We have both, but we can be flexible.
We incorporate life drawing into drawing 2 for articulation agreements to UTRGV. So it is a component in there.
But they are separated.
They're separated, yeah. It's 2313, I think, is life drawing. 2323 is life drawing. And 1317 is drawing 2.
We include life drawing in our drawing 2 class, and we have a figure drawing that follows. I mean, as separate classes.
I would propose we list life drawing in both of them, just to increase options.
We've been advised that having the same class in these 2 lists would be confusing generally. Yeah.
Does that mean they can?
But wouldn't that be going back to credit hours? Because there's no way they could take all of those that are going to be listed in box number 2.
Right. I mean,
Yeah, I think we're still not talking about the number of credit hours in terms of the motion.
How many 2-year schools teach life drawing? I mean, have a class standalone life drawing, not in the drawing
Alamo
2.
Colleges does, and we do sometimes
Excellent.
in ours.
It's on our books, but it doesn't fit in the degree plan in 60 hours.
That's my question. Just
Question.
you do it in drawing 2, right?
Yes.
Question, could we stay with the first box and then figure out if we want to have the second box be also the ones in the first box plus the one in the second box? So could we stay in the first box for now? Thanks.
so do we want to keep life drawing out of the first box?
If life drawing is in the first box, how do I word this? If it's left out of the first box and the second box is not voted in, then we're saying that life drawing that's offered at 2,000 levels at higher institutions will not be enrolled, correct?
There's I think a larger problem if we are being encouraged to not include the same courses from the first list on the second list. The second list is going to create problems for the institutions that are not excited about having a drawing 2, painting 2, photo 2. And if that's the case, then my suggestion would be that we include the classes from the second list in the first list and change the number of hours that are required. And then advising can determine that. If we can't duplicate the list, then the way it's set up now is going to cause greater problems for the 2-year institutions that don't accept the second level. If it's on the first list and we say take 9 or 12, which is what I would advocate for, then advising makes it possible for you to tell students based on where they're going, which classes they ought to take.
Are you making a motion to just have one list?
One list, and then it's the number of hours, and then advising sorts out how, at the community college, depending on where the student's going, sorts out what classes you recommend they take.
Can we have a motion to just have one list?
In theory, we need to vote on the motions previously made. We've made like 3 or 4 that have not been voted on.
The first group those are 2,000 level courses, right? Other than, for the most part, for us, you get into that second group, the 2s, they're all 3,000. We're going to have trouble. I mean, I would substitute them individually, but that's going to present a problem. I mean, the painting, the first group are all 2,000 level, no problem. That slides right over. The second level is going to present a problem for us that we can fix.
Sorry. Yeah, I think if we put level 2s on the same list as level 1s, we're sending the wrong message. We're sending the message that, that they could take a whole bunch of level 2s and avoid the level 1s or something. And I just think that's a bad idea. So I think it has to, if we're going to have level 2s at all in the FOS, they need to be on a separate list.
But that will require that every student take a level 2 class, which you may or may not be interested in.
Well, we haven't.
If it's on the FOS at all, then that's true.
Aren't there prerequisites that a student can't progress to drawing 2 or painting 2, blah, 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 at every college until they've taken the first one?
Sure, but I still think in order to be clear to the student and make things intuitively as clear as possible, that if there's level 2s, they should not be on the same list of a menu of classes as level 1s.
Mm-hmm.
Can the number of hours be take 3 to 4 of list 1 and 0 to 3 of list 2?
I actually like that idea, yeah.
I mean, we do that now in our menus that we have in our
I was just
current
waiting to
degree
propose
plans.
that in hopes that people would vote on the categories, but yes, I was planning on proposing the same.
I mean, knowing how that might work would change how I think you might vote, if that's a possibility.
So what was the first motion?
Yeah.
The first motion was for the list of classes before. That was painting 1, sculpture, printmaking, art, metal, ceramics 1, photography 1, watercolor, design, communications, drawing 2. And theoretically, I did say life drawing, but I'm willing to amend the original motion and put life drawing in section 2 for later discussion. The choose 2 of the, so I'll just amend it and say I'm just moving towards the courses listed, but not moving for the amount of courses.
I second that.
All in favor for the courses listed in the first box? Okay. Yay.
And at 11:15, not a moment too soon.
So can we do the next motion about maybe the categories of courses on the group 2?
Can we add Arts 2311?
I mean, if we're going to have photography and ceramics and painting, don't we need all of them?
That is all of them
That is
on the
all of them.
ACGM.
And so literally, you're not going to have print 2? I mean, that's just...
There is no
longer in the
They've removed
those.
That's why the Arts 2311, where they're able to teach the advanced class under that number.
Yeah.
They pulled all the 2s from everything except painting and sculpture, right, for photography. No,
And
right.
so again, that's where the design 3 comes in, because some schools use it that way. Is that
Yes,
right?
that's right.
Yeah. All right.
Also, it's not listed in our short list, but Arts 2389 Academic Cooperative, is that something else we also want to add into the bottom? The 3-hour version, not the 2-hour?
We currently teach that, and it's just for all intents and purposes for time, it's a BFA seminar at a 2-year degree for students that are wanting to graduate and not proceed to a 4-year degree in arts.
I would oppose that entirely. We have no internship at the early level, and we'd have no place to use that. It only exists at the 4,000 level. So if it's a requirement of your institution to get the degree, then that's a requirement. But in terms of a requirement to transfer to a 4-year institution, that would be problematic.
What is the academic cooperative? I'm sorry. Yeah, I would rather not.
We teach it as a professionalism class. They build a body of work, do an artist statement, do PR materials, hang the exhibition, everything that they need to know how to be a practicing artist. We teach them in that class, and they also do service learning. But I do see how it would create potential problems, so it may not be an FOS, but it may still remain on a 2-year degree plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Move that the list as currently constituted, photography 2, ceramics 2, painting 2, oh, I can't see the rest of it.
Wait,
Help me.
Delete.
Drawing, yay, design 3, but not academic cooperative. So photography 2, ceramics 2, paintings 2, life drawing, design 3 be placed on the FOS in the last box. The current box. I don't know, what box is that?
Second box.
Box number 5, I don't know.
Those will
number 5.
present, those are 3,000 level courses at my institution. I mean, we'll do substitutions, but that's a little problematic for us.
So I think now it would be useful to talk about the how many of these, right? Because if we can say, and I don't know if we want to do by courses or by credit hours, but the thought was, well, let's vote on this motion first, and then we can talk about that.
Again, for the record, it was stated that any four-year institution that has, say, a level 2 specialization class as a 3,000 level class would not be required to transfer those credits through the FOS. However, those institutions should also exercise judgment. If the course material is significantly the same, then they probably should. But that's what we were told by Alan. And so, yeah.
Do we have a motion to have these courses on this list in this box?
There's already a motion.
sorry.
We just need
Do we
to
have a second?
I
discuss
was
and vote.
watching online, the courses under discussion are photography 2, ceramics 2, painting 2, life drawing, and design 3.
I moved. Anybody second?
Should we just go ahead and clarify how many credits are in each box?
I would rather
Oh,
just-
no, we're not yet. Okay, we're just,
I second the motion.
Thank you very much.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Do we have a motion about credit hours for these 2 menus of classes that we have identified?
Okay, I'll make a motion for box 1 to have 9 to 12 credit hours and box 2 to have 0 to 3 credit hours.
Is there a second?
Wait. That's going to create problems for registrars. It's going to create confusion for students to have a choice of a range of credit hours in the field of study. I think we either needed to say choose X number of semester credit hours. I wouldn't say choose 0 to 9 from this box and choose 0 to 3 from this other box.
But by doing so, it allows flexibility for the four-year institutions.
Choose from. Either that or create one list and say just,
It's control. I think the purpose of that is to limit the number of upper, second level classes, but to accommodate them, but limit and give them choices, but to limit the number of those choices.
Quick point of order.
Our registrar regularly deals with lists at UNT, not just in CVAD, of 6 to 12 and 0 to 6. That's not an unusual circumstance. I don't know how that works for other institutions, but at our institution, that's not an unusual situation.
Yeah.
So perhaps these are boxes within a box. There's a box that says X number of hours from this list, and 6 must come from this group. And
that would be an easier way to do it, to pick one of these 3 courses, pick one of these 3 courses, pick 2 of these 3 courses, something like that would be easier to deal with.
But we want to have them, those courses on the bottom in the second list, we want them to have the option of not choosing anything from that and choosing all from the first list.
So in essence, we're looking for, for example, 6 courses total from list 1 and 2. And then from list 1, we control.
Can you go 9 from list 1 and 3 from the bottom?
But that would mean that they would have to take a 200,000 level, which I think we want to leave open. I'll say our registrar deals with that sort of thing all the time as well. So the UT Austin registrar, they grumble, but every single department has things like this in the degree programs. But I have no problem with this FOS committee, being out of the box and saying this is what we're going to do. If you're telling us that no previous FOS committee have pulled this kind of a trick, then that's interesting for us to know. I don't know, it needs to limit us from trying to do this.
Well, if you're going to do that, then the simplest way to do that would be to reconfigure the boxes. Have everything you know, like I said, to have your choice, make it so that a student could choose to take none of these courses if they chose a certain number of these, and if you want to have a lack of duplication among these. But what you don't want is you don't want students to take just these courses without these courses.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, I
That's
think
the
what we
concern.
want is if a student chooses from list 2 that the maximum they could choose would be 3 hours, would be one course in the FOS, or choose none. That's really, I think, what the other four-year institutions would consider ideal.
So we want some students, they might choose to do all 12 credit hours just from list 1. And some students would do 9 from list 1 and 3 from list 2.
Do you think there would be some advantage to requiring students to have at least one class that's a little more advanced?
The problem is... We've been talking about that for quite some time, and we've decided...
I have a suggestion is, could we, I know, at the bottom of box 1, could we include choose one from box 2? And then just have, because I understand that you want to limit, you don't want them to just stack up a bunch of level 2 courses. And so if they were taking 9 credit hours in the first box, they could choose any of the level 1 studio and the option of choosing one from the level 2 below.
Oh, I see. So within the box, one of the choices to choose one.
Yeah,
from
the
other box.
last,
Oh, that's nice.
the last selection is
Be fine.
Yeah,
that's nice.
one level 2 studio from the list below.
Alan, would that work and be clear?
I
No,
would
what she
say,
was
instead
saying
of
was kind of
or, I
the
would say
opposite.
no more than,
Or,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, or one of the following.
Okay. Or only one of the following.
Only, yeah, that's right, only one of the following.
Awesome.
Is that working for you guys? Is that
Could I bring up-
meeting your?
If I understand this right, what it would be then is if you weren't going to UNT, the only thing you would take from that list then would be life drawing. Correct? Because nobody else is going to take the second level courses. Is that?
Well, we would prefer not to, but we do now. We can accommodate students. We try to accommodate students, but ideally,
Right.
you know, but
Can it
What I
be-
liked about the box being there, like, it could be like really good for advising that third box, like, don't pick anything from here unless you're going to UNT. Right? I mean,
Right.
Well, I mean, part of the reality, I think, is we will get those students. We will have transfers that have had levels 2, and we will have to contend with that issue. Now, as it stands, because our level 3 or level 2s are 3,000 level classes, we can make a choice on an individual basis, based even on portfolio, about whether to transfer those. But it'll have to be handled on a case-by-case basis.
My institution currently, in the previous one where it was just box 1, we only accept 2 courses transferring over.
from the list, from the first list?
From before we mashed it together, painting 1 all the way through drawing 2, our degree plan said 2, we require 2 from that list, actually, for our foundations requirement.
Question. How many of the community colleges have the level 2 courses? Do all of them?
We do have them, yes.
Okay.
Choosing 12 total is a reduction of 6 hours beyond what we already require and an increase of 6 hours what you require. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great compromise.
Political.
I think part of the reason why we don't go higher is because of design is considered a studio art, even though we have 390 majors in it. And if we start to say our design students have to start taking ceramics 2 or something like our transfer students, they're going to be you're basically, they're going to be behind in design. It may not actually be get in, and that's probably around 20% of our students.
They don't have to take ceramics according to this plan. If the numbers, yeah.
I mean, I've had the same concerns, but I have refrained from saying any of that because this is specifically the studio art FOS, and so, but we're going to have the same problem for graphic design.
At your institution, is it a single BFA for studio graphic design, everybody, or do you have a BFA in design?
It's a BFA with a specialization in communication design, and, but it's got it's a very rigorous track. I can't imagine how, I'm just.
It won't be a problem for our design students in the future. I'm being hopeful if we get our own CIP approval, so it won't matter. But I also, I have to also consider that the film and video is also folded in. Our gaming is also folded in, and so other non-traditional classics. So the second level list is a little more problematic, I think, for our institution.
And that goes back again to the reason why we wanted 0 to 3 from a separate list there, Alan. But that, you don't think that works?
At this point, we can try it. We can send it out for public comment. Just do what you think is best, and we can see if we can get it to work.
Well, Jeff,
I'm still not crazy about the idea about choosing a range of semester credit hours. I think you need to give them how many hours they need to take from each list, and then design the list accordingly. And if it doesn't all work perfectly, then you make it work as best you can. But I don't know. We need to. I'm unclear now about what you want. Is this what we're voting on, or do you want to move this back to the list down here?
No, because what we're really talking about is the number of hours at this point, not the list. And so, I mean, if UNT had what it would like, then this would say choose 6 of the courses below. I know that we're not going to get 6. We are an outlier in that. I also understand the problems that Texas State is dealing with and UT Arlington are dealing with in terms of they have a studio BFA that is also their communication design, graphic design program. And so there's an entirely different list of courses that students should take if they want to be graphic designers or animators or film. And
Alan, I also had a concern too, because on the list of people that are not in this room, like UT Dallas with their digital media arts and the what's this? UNT Dallas Communication and Technology and Digital Production, which they don't, from this list, as far as I can tell, they don't require any of these classes.
That's not a BFA, is it?
I have no idea. So I was wondering if that's this, because there's no CIP code. I don't know their programs well enough to understand if we're making a good decision on their behalf, or are we forcing their hand to start including these as part of their curriculum?
Well, that's another discussion I was hoping to have time for today, of whether or not we want to have this field of study cover digital design-related programs like that. It doesn't look like it.
Not yet.
It's problematic for us because it's not even in it's not even an arts and science or associate of art degree at San Antonio College. That's over in occupational technology.
Okay, all right, so to get back, I believe, to the problem at hand, for these two institutions, should there be, and I realize I'm opening an entire can of worms because graphic design is a different beast altogether, but should there be graphic design level 1 classes included on this list that you would then accept?
That's the only level 1 design class that is from the ACGM is actually on the list. So we're fine. I'm willing to compromise with 3 of the courses below.
Can you define what you mean by compromise? Which
like
3 courses?
Instead of 12
I'm
hours,
moving it from 2 to 3.
Oh, okay. Please choose 3 of the courses below, 9 credits for 3 courses.
That's sort of like halfway, I believe, right?
No?
No?
It was halfway.
I prefer the 3 of the courses below also.
That's about how we set up our students to go off to our schools. We get through through the first 6, and then with their other academic things in there, they might get 3 or 4 of those others in before they move off to the 4-year.
So, Alan, I have a question relative to UNT, because it changes things pretty dramatically. If we said 3, we still would require 3 more 2,000 level classes to move forward in the degree. And we can't do that under FOS.
Oh, not for your transfer students. This would be the complete set of lower division requirements for the major.
Which then would likely encourage us to move all of our level 2 classes to 3,000 level classes. And then we'd be in line with everybody else, and that wouldn't serve the community colleges very effectively or the students. But to get around the number of courses that are required at a certain level, then that would be something that we would then, I mean, essentially, this decision of 9 hours would encourage us to make wholesale changes in the way we have our courses listed now.
I think the 9 hours there would increase enrollments in the community college in those classes, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but I'm still 9 hours deficit.
I mean, it would, if you had to change yours to 3,000, but, I mean, they would maybe losing the second level, but their numbers, I mean, we're requiring now that they have to take those courses. And my experience is those numbers would go up in 2-year schools, wouldn't they? I mean, I would think they would, but.
Question, wouldn't individual institutions have the prerogative on a case-by-case basis to accept a 2,000 level course as equivalent to a 3,000 level class? Or is that forbidden because if a student is taking a course at 2,000 level at a community college, then a 3,000 level at a 4-year will not count?
It's acceptable, it just doesn't count as advanced credit hours.
It just doesn't count, we have advanced credit.
So theoretically, for a student who in fact has completed the course at community college and who you judge to have, in fact, be prepared to move on or to count that as 3,000, you would have the prerogative to do that. But right? Am I getting that correct?
We could count the course, but I don't know that it would count towards the advanced credit requirements.
Got it.
We couldn't, I mean, we can substitute for making 2 for that, but it doesn't count as a 3,000 level course.
Got it, okay.
Does that mean the student is then now paying for an additional course to complete their degree, or?
Now it could be advanced, that's course.
Is there room for an elective that course could be placed into?
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, not a lot. I mean, that's why there's a limit to the number of, I mean, there may be 1 elective at the most, and that means if they haven't taken anything else that's off their degree plan, then, that.
Well, that's why we're having an FOS, so if the FOS is in place, then they wouldn't be just taking all these other classes. This is the plan, and then there'd be 1 elective.
I'll have to go back and change all of that list, because I currently have those, rather than the design and the drawing, they're all 3,000 now. So I'll go back and push to lower the painting, sculpture, printmaking, all that, 1s from 3,000 to 2, which probably needs to be done anyways. But
Natalie, are you
the
asking
2s will present a problem for us.
Are you asking for a studio elective? It's not a general core elective, but a studio elective?
I'm asking if there's an art elective, if there's room for an elective in their plan that second level could fit into, and then maybe that could be like a little bit of a minor or something that you can still have them take that 3,000 level class.
I think some of the problems.
They still may have the advanced credit. That may be, and it's not a huge problem, but it could be a problem.
I have a feeling we'll probably be back after public input. My suggestion is to proceed with a lower number and basically wait for the feedback and then to discuss upping it or lowering it.
Whatever the comments are, yeah. Do we have a motion?
So are you suggesting that we move back to 2, or are you okay with 3 for now?
I'm okay with 3.
Okay. Yes, we have a motion. Here we go.
I second.
Go ahead. You take it.
By the way, it's
Michael, would you please, he's inviting you to make the motion.
I'm sorry, I did. I was cross, we were talking over each other. I second the motion.
No, he wants you to make the motion.
Yeah.
I make a motion to accept the mixed column, choose 3 of the courses below as it stands on the screen.
What happened to the level 2? I don't really understand it where it says one of the following. Because I get what you're saying, choose 3 of the level 1s and drawing 2.
They're limited to taking only one of that subcategory.
But it doesn't make, sense to me the way it's read.
They don't have to.
It should say or one of the following.
So, but it still doesn't make sense. Now it tells me I don't have to take any of that first list. I only need to take one of that last.
No or, one of the following. Because you can pick 3 of those bullet points.
Got it.
Right, and then we have sub-bullets.
Just one of the following.
I'm starting to see it, but
I still would say that for most institutions, the only one that would transfer then would be life drawing, right? So do we want that to be the only choice? Are we saying that we want everyone to have life drawing when they get to your institution? Because I think that's what that second list says.
the longer I look at it, the more it makes sense, and after your description, it makes sense. I'm just saying that probably someone looking at this for the first time is going to scratch their head.
I'm wondering if we should just title it Advanced Studio and then say after it, students may only take one of the following? Only one of the following can be taken? Does it need its own category name because it's without a category?
Maybe the bullet needs to be indented. The dark bullet, not the.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I make a motion to accept the newly revised subcategory of choose 3 of the courses below for a total of 9 credits.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I think we've got that over. So all in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? We have completed our very first provisional FOS.
Oh, wow, we did? Really?
Okay, now the next question is to say whether or not you want to
We're at
have a
26.
field of study for an academic track, art history, general art studies, not a BFA, a BA.
Alan, I think your math is incorrect on the first level, Alan, on the first chart.
Well, history is a separate degree.
A BA in art general studies is not going to be the same as art history for us at all.
It's a BA in art, studio art.
Studio art, yeah.
A BA in studio art, yeah.
Just a BA in art.
Yeah.
The CIP code is 50701.00. It's art/art studies general, at least for our institution.
Same as this, except for what?
Fewer of the courses below.
Right.
Well, I would just take off all the.
Second, the advanced courses.
Yeah,
just take them off.
I would just say take.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And maybe even up that number. It could be 4 classes from the following. But we could leave it at 3 and then just take out the advanced.
Wow. Did we just unvote?
No, we're looking at the BA. I would be more comfortable with 2 for the BA.
I would prefer to see all of them removed for my BA.
Okay. So just up to digital art?
All of that last box removed because I only have 33 hours in my BA major.
We require 6 hours from that list, from the 1 and 2000 level art classes. for our BA. And so to remove it means we can no longer require those.
For our BA, we actually still use the same BFA and requirements. So for us, the BFA FOS actually works for our BA students.
Same for me. It works.
For
me.
For ours, we have fewer of the courses. So again, that's why I was proposing 2 of the courses below.
That would work for us.
I mean,
courses below.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, we're getting close to a point where the student, in theory, could take 2 years at a 2-year school of these classes, show up and take 1 class, and then have the BA in studio. You know, I mean, because my BA is not huge, so.
But you still require X number of hours at your institution before they graduate. I mean, and that's always been the case. There's nothing, I mean, that's not new from what are the practices now, and because your requirements still are within this range, so that's not a new situation.
Well, I'm comfortable with 2 from that list.
May I move that?
Keep in mind that this could also serve as the degree for those teaching teacher certification. What they would do is take this field of study plus 2 EDUC courses. One is just an introduction to the teaching profession, and another one is called special populations.
I think NASAD prefers the BFA.
They would take the BFA for teacher certification?
They prefer the BFA
Ours
for
is closer
teacher
to BFA,
certification.
too.
Ours is BFA.
Because that's what mine is.
Could students choose either one?
Ours is BFA.
Or for teacher certification, do you have to take the BFA?
Yes.
Ours is a BFA as well.
And because it's a track, it actually goes over 120 hours.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yes to what? They have to take the BFA?
Yes.
That's what we do.
Yeah, the core BFA, yeah.
In San Antonio, they can take it just a BA. It's separate.
So if we're keeping a BA and a BFA separate, then I think we're actually the student will be served on the education regardless of the 2, right? So I don't know that we need to have a separate FOS, because if a student's taking a BFA education degree, then they need to follow the BFA FOS, whereas if they're doing a BA education degree, they'll follow the BA FOS. Is that fair? I think that would be the cleanest way to do this.
Our BAs are the students who get kicked out of the BFA, so they're going to be transferring in.
Well,
Our students will be transferring, our BA students are people who don't pass our portfolio review for the BFA, and that's an alternative for them. The BA and they're basically done at that time when we have the portfolio review. So if a student transfers in with the BFA FOS and then doesn't pass our portfolio review, they're going to become BAs and they're going to be done.
that's what's going to happen at Texas State, too.
Yeah, that's what happens with us, or they choose another major altogether.
What's that?
And that's why we want our teachers to have BFAs, because we don't want the ones who don't pass the portfolio review to become teachers.
I'll say some of our BAs in studio are pre-med and taking other majors, but yes, there's some of that for us too as well.
Shall we go ahead and make a motion? I make a motion on the BA in art as written on the screen, which is basically the same as BFA without the advanced courses.
Can we
and
adjust the
change
total
to
number of
twos,
credits?
too.
Because it's not 21, it's 24.
Go with 2.
We're not changing anything, but the math added up to 24.
Going down.
So we need to change the math.
Right, we
on the one
need-
above
No,
also.
it is 21, because we're only requiring
Right.
Two, yeah.
2 classes.
That's right.
Right, so it's still 24.
24 because there's 18 above.
24.
3, 6, 8, 18, yeah, 24, that's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, 18 and 6 is 24.
It's
It's
27.
27.
It's 24.
Yes.
They have to balance
Yes.
the budget.
And that bugs me. Can't look at it.
Okay, we have a motion to accept as, for the BA, the general BA in studio art, where it's 2 classes, 6 credit hours from that list, the menu. Anything else I should add? Do we have a second?
I second.
Any further discussion?
The digital, I'm sorry, it's a design thing. The digital art is not centered in the table cell. Sorry, OCD.
It's
Alan,
Microsoft
please ignore
Word.
that.
No one would use it anyways.
Centered vertical.
It's fine. While Alan's figuring out the centering, all in favor?
Oh, yes, oh my God, yes, thank you.
We have our second provisional FOS.
Now, we got a few minutes to talk about, does there need to be a third track? It could be teacher certification, could be design, could be digital. Could be art history. Art history would be nice, because there are a lot of transfer students in that.
Yes.
I think that we should consider what Roberta proposed yesterday. It sounded perfect to me, and I think we should, if she could present that.
I can't remember what I presented. I believe I said Art History 1, Arts 1303, Arts 1304, Design 1, Design 2, and Humanities. Choose 2 Humanities from the list. Art History.
BA in art history.
Did you want a foreign language too?
Oh, yes.
No, and I know our
Right.
history folks do that. I
So
don't-
2 semesters
Yeah.
of foreign language in the same language.
Yeah. That, I mean, that already, if they can do that, that's...
That's
they're-
perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great, thank you. I like that.
Okay, so,
No drawing 1, right? Yeah.
Well, I would prefer that we have that as an option, a choice between design 1 and design 2 and drawing. Is
Oh,
that-
I see.
Or, so design.
Yeah, or.
Oh, that's a,
2 of the 3.
Well, yeah, okay.
For our art history program, we only require 1 studio art course. And then we have the option between the 3 art survey foundations, which includes the non-Western.
right.
If we say that they can only take History 1 and 2
Right.
without the non-Western, then that kills many non-Western advanced courses.
Your art historians aren't required to take all 3 of the surveys?
No, because they can specialize.
unfortunately, we don't have a third art history survey. However, we might be able to use humanities. We may be able to make a special section, special topics in
Right.
Humanities 1315 that would cover non-Western European examples.
You've got Mexican-American
That's a good
fine
idea.
arts appreciation.
Alan, I also wanted to just double check. Do we have, according to the rule I read yesterday on the field of study, rules and regulations, that there is a majority of the teachers in that expertise? Do we have enough institutions that offer a BA or BFA in art history to make a decision of a FOS here today?
Here.
Yeah, the expertise, because I know my institution offers that degree, but I don't know if we have enough representation to make that call here
Well,
today.
the trick is that there's just not much in the ACGM to work with. You know, there's the 2 art history courses, and everything else would be whatever else we want it to be, general, arts appreciation courses from different genres, or we could put in some history courses. You could put in World History 1, World History 2. But there's not a lot to work with. So we could make our best take at it and send it out for public comment. On the other hand, if you feel like we don't have the expertise in the room to do it, or that there's not enough student demand for it, then we could just punt on it and not propose one. But it'd be nice if we could put one out there.
So I think there's student demand, but I'd be concerned also on behalf of my colleagues that, for example, the lack of presence of non-Western art would be cemented into an FOS, that then students would not have the opportunity to do that at the lower level the way that they tend to do with us at UT. And I know my art history colleagues are very keen on a particular pedagogy for first and second year, which doesn't seem to be easily reflected in the courses available in the roster that two-year colleges have to them right now.
I think also for art history, they have writing and criticism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think art history may be a little more differentiated, I don't know, institution by institution at the lower level than studio is, but I might be wrong. I'm not enough of an expert to call. So I take your point about do we have the expertise here to speak about.
We have a curriculum proposal for an art history degree in the pipeline right now. I just wrote the curriculum, and there are 2,000 level classes that would not be in, that are not in this list. I can't remember what exactly they are right now.
It's hard to imagine we're not going to have that situation, and I guess that requires for me another point of clarity, because it still is somewhat unclear to me. So if a student were to come out of a two-year school, FOS complete, wanting to be an art history major, and they transfer to a four-year, can that four-year require 2,000 level classes of that student? No. And so if we're going to make the FOS about it, then it needs to be complete to a degree, no pun intended, that we can actually use those students. I mean, we can reclassify some classes and say, well, they're all going to be 3,000 level, but that's still, that's not the spirit of how this is supposed to work, right?
If currently we, our institution is not doing anything in field of study, so we're just looking at and transferring it individually. The only thing that I think I would feel comfortable moving forward with as far as no. I was going to suggest just one studio art, but then they wouldn't be able to do the art histories. For me, I would feel better just not recommending a field of study for art history at this time until the ACGM can be updated.
Well, table it, yeah.
Updated to include non-Western.
So updated to include non-Western and other art history related courses.
Because we're being told to make a sandwich out of a casserole. Yeah.
The right question is to ask, what are these art history programs doing now already at the lower division? And what we would be doing is just codifying what's already being done and rely upon the expertise of the people who are already doing it. So we could solicit public opinion about that, or we could put forward something, just anything, and when it goes out for public opinion, we would hopefully get input from Stephen F. Austin, Texas State, UT Arlington, El Paso, San Antonio, Houston, North Texas, where they do have art history, and they are apparently doing something at the lower division, and we could do some research on what exactly that would be.
And my numbers have grown tremendously for art history, tremendously. It's been unreal. So, but we don't really have anything in place. So it's just been guiding them through taking research writing and other classes that would help in foreign language, and of course the hours that we offer.
At least UNT and UT Austin, which is the only ones that I looked at just for a sample, looks like they of course do the surveys. They have, one has art appreciation, they do two of the studios, but there's not much at the lower division. Hardly anything. Presumably, just the studio courses at UT Austin, and UT Austin's is being phased out, as I understand it, right?
Well, I'm sorry, which one?
Is UT Austin's art history being phased out?
No. Oh, no. No.
It's a gym in the ground. But Stephen F. Austin is transferring.
Yeah.
They're phased.
I would feel much more comfortable for an FOS committee to be gathered of people who are really much closer to this expertise of art history. I mean, not to, of course we have one expert here in the room, but really only one. And as a music historian, I'm close enough to my art history colleagues to know that their notion of what might be best practices, they're eager to communicate them and to partner with two-year institutions. But I think I would like to give more space for them to do this. So I feel uncomfortable for this committee to call an art history FOS.
Are you asking for like a FOS to force the discussion to begin on that discipline?
That seems a little...
Well, I'm kind of thinking you're right. I mean, in the time we've got left, which is like 2 minutes, we're not going to be able to put together a sound field of study for that. I mean, nor should we. So we can either take it up again when and if we meet again to discuss the public comments, or we can just let this be a topic for 5 years from now when this is reviewed.
Well, is there not the additional option to convene a different FOS committee specifically for art history? Is that not sufficient?
Yes, you could. You could call a subcommittee. Kinesiology did that. History did that when they felt like they didn't have the expertise in the room to create a history field of study for educators. For teaching certification. So we called a separate subcommittee of 24 teachers from across the state to advise the committee on what the history teaching track should be. If this committee feels it's appropriate, we could convene a subcommittee. They don't have the voting authority because their position is to inform this committee, and then this committee is authorized by the board to make the vote. But we could convene a subcommittee of art historians to talk about that, and then make a recommendation to you, and then you would have to come back to Austin for a public meeting to hear their recommendation and make a vote, which could coincide with when we come back to talk about the public comments.
I think that's a good scenario. So I'll move that we convene a subcommittee, informative subcommittee of art history faculty from 4 and 2 year institutions to talk among themselves and give us a recommendation for FOS.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Okay. Is there do we have any indication of how big that subcommittee would be and how many members?
Well, it could be up to 24 members, but these are there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 institutions that have art history degrees. So hopefully we can get somebody from each of these 8 institutions. I don't know what to do about the colleges. I'd like to have 8 people from colleges as well. So we'll put out a public call just like we did before for nominations. So for those of you particularly from these universities that are here, please think about this and let your CAO, your provost, know who you would like to be nominated for that. And it's if you're an art historian yourself and would like to be on the committee, it's nice to have some overlap on the, well, no, I take that back. We shouldn't have overlap from this committee with the subcommittee. However, our 2 co-chairs need to be there. So if the co-chairs, you would be representing the committee and the deliberations of the subcommittee. So one or both of you would need to be there for that, for the subcommittee as well.
Okay. Can there be double representation? Denise is an art historian and Roberta is. Can they also serve on the subcommittee? And Chrissy, sorry.
I'll check on that. I don't see why not, although getting the as broad, since they're already on this committee, getting a broader representation and then, increasing the number of voices might be even better. So, but I don't think there's no rule prohibiting that. So if you think that's the best, then I suppose that'd be all right.
Well, I'm speaking for Denise, who's in Australia, and I'm texting her right now, but I believe that she would want to be on the committee because, frankly, I think that most of the rest of us are going to say, oh, that's your recommendation? That I agree, because
well, I mean,
we're not
the
the
history committee
experts.
didn't actually accept the full recommendation of their subcommittee, so you never know.
Yeah.
Okay, since we're about at an end here, what we're going to leave for the record here, just to make sure I'm clear on this, we're going to leave open the question of a teacher certification track. We're going to leave that either to the Multidisciplinary Studies Committee to determine, or would you recommend that those pursuing teacher certification take the BFA with the additional 2 EDUC courses? Or either one of the BFA or BA tracks with the 2 EDUC courses?
Because art ed at Texas State is a BFA, I would argue that at the very least, either one, that they take either the BFA or the BA.
My understanding is the state requirements, though, are fairly specific if you're going to go into art education, and the general BFA FOS that we just created is not specific, and in fact could mislead students who are interested in art education about which classes they need to be taking at a 2-year institution to transfer. So I don't Am I incorrect in that?
No, you're right. You're
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I think that...
We had specialized courses because there are practicums and there are theories.
Right, and they pretty much have to take ceramics.
Like 9 hours of studio just for the familiar, just to...
And even those are, if not prescribed, are very strongly recommended based on what kind of art is taught at the early childhood to 12 program, like ceramics and printmaking and drawing and painting. So I think that the BFA that we have discussed, FOS, in fact, is probably not applicable as it stands for art education and would need to be a separate track.
I think it's separate.
Okay, well, let's take that up again when we meet again then to hear the recommendations of the subcommittee. And I'll try to put together some research. And you can do some research as well from your own institution, from your own system, from your own community college district. What is already being done out there? What are the standards for the teaching certification for art? And perhaps we can discuss that when we come back, because that would be helpful to a large number of students. Okay.
Are we setting the meeting for the next time now? Or
What happens next is I will send these 2 tracks out for a 30-day public comment period. I'll get the public comments in. I'll put them all together into one document, formatted document. For every actionable recommendation, some people will just grouse about things in general, but insofar as people give us specific, fixable recommendations, I'll turn those into yes or no votes for you. Do you accept this? Do you reject this idea? That will give us an idea for what we need to do. In the meantime, I'll also put out a call for members to be on this art history subcommittee. That's going to take some time because that has to go out for a public call. That has to be 2 or 3 weeks to give institutions time to nominate. We got to pick the members. They have to have time to pick a meeting date. They've got to come to Austin, do their thing. So that's going to take a lot more than 30 days. So it will take at least 2, maybe 3 months for that committee to have their recommendation in hand. So I'll save so when we come back again, it will be probably 2.5, 3 months from now. We'll talk about the public comments and the recommendation of the subcommittee at the same time and have some research done about the teaching track. Does that sound about right?
And are we just leaving alone a BFA in graphic design, communication design?
Oh, well,
I mean,
we
it's like
ran out
half
of
the
time,
students.
so we
I mean,
ran out
half
of
the
time to talk
student
about it. So
population
I
of
think
this-
we can either boot that for the next round of this committee 5 years from now, or perhaps a separate field of study. Do you think it justifies to have a separate entire committee?
There's no way I'm living with my colleagues who get to avoid an FOS when I have to live with one.
Well, we can take up a graphic design track as well next time we meet, if you want to do that. We can research it and talk about that along with the teaching track and the art history track.
It's half Texas State's art and design student population. It's hard for me to imagine it's not half the state's art student population. Why would we not have an FOS in graphic and communication design?
But how many universities offer that as a major?
Almost everybody.
Everybody's got
Okay. Okay. Well, that's something that we didn't have time for today, so we'll have to take that up next time. So in the meantime, be researching that. What is already being done at the lower division for these programs? Compare that to what needs to be done, and between those two, we'll walk the fine line and create a field of study for that too. Do we feel like we have the expertise in the room to do that, to do a graphic design field of study?
Well, I won't be at the next meeting. Denise will be. But
I mean, I feel confident in my ability to inform myself from colleagues, yeah.
Does that need to be a subcommittee too?
I'm just curious, with the 2-year colleges, do you all have this, how many people have graphic design in the associate plan?
Graphic arts.
Graphic arts.
It's
It's in your associate, ours is in
Yes.
occupational technology.
We have an AA in graphic arts.
Are we the only one like that?
Ours is technical. It's a certification, but it's outside of our academic.
Yeah, ours is outside of academic. How many people are outside of academic? Because it's like there's a whole nother group of faculty that would have to get
Well, then
involved
that just
in
opens
this.
up transferability. Those courses have.
Yeah,
That is the other thing, is those courses are
they're
not highly
set up-
transferable.
They're not set up, and you're getting back to, you still got to pick from that same list of classes that's in the ACGM,
Okay,
right?
and that may be the solution then. I just wanted to raise that question. They are, like in several of our two-year colleges, that's a certificate program. It's not in the associate,
they
so
don't
it doesn't
always come to-
transfer. So are they out of the question then?
Right, for me, excuse me, sorry. I co-run the design program, and currently the ACGM doesn't have sufficient design courses to be an FOS. For me, right now, it's better for my program not to have an FOS, so that a way that can be judged on a case-by-case basis.
There is, I mean, based on the courses that exist in the ACGM, there's no way that we could complete our program with an FOS in place, because there are not enough courses that we could require. I mean, we have 18 hours just of graphic design classes in the freshman and sophomore year. And if we don't get those 18 hours in, we could not complete our
Then
degree.
that's, in a case like that, I mean, this is how we fix the ACGM. It's with committees like this that tell us what we need to know to make sure the ACGM is what it has to be and needs to be for the state. So if there are courses that everyone is making their students take in these programs at the lower division that are not in the ACGM, then it's overdue to be in the ACGM. Give the colleges an opportunity to teach these courses, give students an opportunity to have them transfer. So that might be a very important conversation to have, is what are the courses that are currently being offered at the lower division that are not reflected in the ACGM.
There'll also be credential issues, that a lot of the people that are teaching in the workforce don't have the terminal degree in graphic design and all that. I mean, it's going to be just problems that you already know you're
But
going to run
that's
into.
not something we need to consider, I think, at this point. I mean, I think he's right. We need to see if there are courses missing that we can include into the ACGM that can be, I mean, our design area is in the business, and it is a WECM design, but it does also get accredited through NASAD. So I'm not sure how they walk that line, but
or what may also be the case is we're going to have a learning objectives committee. Rebecca's going to have to pull one of those committees together anyway to deal with the changes that we're making to digital media. So that committee can do their due diligence and their homework about what courses are already being done in design, graphic design, and they can put together some, draft some proposals for some new ACGM courses. Then our committee can weigh in on those, consider them, and maybe that can be done before we meet next time, and those two committees can be working hand in hand. So there's a lot of options here, but I know we have to stop. Also, next time, Christy can put together a track for kinesiology. We left out the kinesiology track. I'm still teasing you about the kinesiology in your art school.
I'll bring them.
I love that.
Come on.
Okay, well, thank you all for your expertise, for your time, for your patience, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on this.
Are you going to send us a copy of what we decided on
This
today?
was a very difficult meeting to take notes on. Very much a big thank you to our co-chairs, and thanks to all of you for coming. And don't forget to while it's on your mind, when you get back home, to take a minute to go onto that web page and put down your time that you've spent and your expenses that this trip has cost you, because I have to report that to the legislature every year about what these committees are costing the state. So please do that while it's fresh on your mind. I don't need your receipts, but I just need the estimate of the time and money that you've spent. Okay.
Alan, are you going to provide us with documents that everything we've decided today?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll need to write this up, format it, clean it up a little bit, put the course numbers on there, and then I'll send it all to you for your record. And then I'll get that routed for public comment as soon as I can.
And so should we expect that next week or this coming week?
Yeah, sure. I'll send it to you next week, and then it probably won't go out for public comment until either the very end of next week or the beginning of the week after that, because it's got to be routed, and
from
a lot
that,
of people have to sign off on it.
And from that day, there would be 30 days.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And I'll ask you to forward it to your colleagues, the people in the state that you know, to get this as widely distributed as we can. We really need every university and hopefully every college in the state to see this and get it in front of their department chairs. Hopefully it will be on the agenda of everybody's next committee meeting, departmental committee meeting, to get your department's sense of where the department stands on this. Getting feedback from departments is a whole lot easier for us to work with than from individuals.
Right.
If we get the same letter with slight variations from 10 people on a department, that gets kind of unwieldy. But if the department can speak as one voice about here's where we stand on this, we could accept this, we can't work with that, how about this? Then that's a little easier for us to do. And encourage your colleagues to make actionable suggestions. Don't just say, we don't like it, or say, we wish that we had courses in medieval art history. Well, we can't really, our committee can't fix that. So try to give them to make specific recommendations of cut this course, add this course, make these courses an option, move this here, too many semester credit hours, not enough. Those are the kind of things that we can vote on. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all again very much for your time, and I will certainly be in touch soon.